everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. We've got an extended cast here today for good reason. I'm your host. My name is Brian Vitale. Joining me, we have Josh Torres.
I survived the Switch 2 pre-order ride.
We have Mikhail Mednani
I survived Oblivion Remastered.
on Steam Deck. We have Adam Vitale,
I just had a pretty normal week.
James Galizio,
I also survived getting a Switch 2 pre-order.
Xiaomin Wu,
I also got a Switch 2 pre-order.
and joining us we have Cullen Black.
Hi, I died in the 100 Mines.
There we go. So yeah, we have a lot of big game releases to talk about. We have a couple releases, a couple announcements, of course, a long expected shadow drop that we've already name dropped here in the opening. So that's why we have the extended cast. We have different people who have touched on different things over the last couple of weeks. Of course, if you've followed the website at all, you've seen reviews go up for games like Clair, Obscur, Expedition 33. You've seen a feature go up for 100 Line. We've talked about Oblivion. We have a bunch of guides going up for that. So those are all going to be topics of this week's podcast with different people having focused on different things. We're going to open up today talking about Clair Obscur, and then go into 100 Line. Those will kind of be like our 1A and 1B for this week. So Clair Obscur, I know our review on the site was written by Scott White, but he was not able to make it to the podcast. However, other people like Adam and Mikhail Mikhail, did you have early access for this one, or did you just grab it when it launched?
No, I had early access. A
Hold
bit
on,
later than Scott.
I'm raising my hand. Before we get into the games, I really want to talk about the Switch 2 pre-order experience before any of that.
Yeah, okay. We'll talk about that. Then we'll go into Clair Obscur, and then we'll go into 100 Line. We'll make that our starting cadence before we go into everything else. Very heavy week, so we got to order it in some fashion. But yeah, let's
Switch
talk
2
about
is a pretty universal experience that I think anyone can understand the frustration of dealing with that.
Yeah, I didn't I saw some of the lead up, then I went to bed, and then I saw some of the fallout, but I wasn't in the trenches. So we'll start out with Josh, talk about your Switch 2 experience, and then I know a handful of us mentioned having survived.
I was pretty ear to the ground on this one. I was actually in the Wario 64 Discord. I wanted to get a sense of the landscape of because the people who, in Wario 64's community, they live for this shit because Wario 64 is all about deals and getting people in the gaming community pretty up to date, deals, anything that's happening, in terms of
Price
availability, price errors, etc. So this is the community that I wanted to keep an eye on. Of okay, I want to know what the Switch 2 craze looks like because this has been a whole saga between the Switch 2 pre-orders being delayed in US and Canada because of the whole and the continuing confusion of the tariffs situation happening in the United States and so forth. So they, as we shared last week, they were opening up pre-orders on the 24th after delays on it, and I wanted to know what how people were tracking this, right? Because the announced outlets that were gonna be the first to offer pre-orders were Best Buy, Target, and Walmart. These were the big three that night that people kept their eye on, and they all had and then GameStop the day after for in-store. And then James can speak to that in a bit. So I was I don't want to go crazy on this. I'm gonna give this 1 hour of my time and see if I can. I gotta go hard on it for an hour. And then if I don't get in an hour, I will stop and I will not care. So, and I was I'm not gonna be having 3 different tabs for 3 different online stores on this. I'm just gonna stick with Best Buy because they have a pickup option. And ideally, I would just like to go into the night of June 4th, 9 p.m. Pacific, and go into a Best Buy and pick up my pre-order because I have a flight to catch on the next day. I can't be still here trying to get a Switch 2 on the day of when I have a flight going out. So ideally, I just wanted to get a Switch 2, set it up, and then fly out to wherever I need to go that following day. So 9 p.m. Pacific drops on the 23rd, and then these are things are supposed to open up. And I believe Target and Walmart were the first to go up, and Walmart had like a queue, like an online queue for.
You had to hold a button, like literally they had a button you had to click and hold, and it like the site kept going down. So a lot of people were reporting, and I did this as well. You just had to stand there mashing a button on their website just to get into the line.
So yeah, so that was an experience, and then people were like had to wait. There's a timer for where there was in line. Some people were getting pushed back, saying, "Oh, I have like 5 minutes left." Now I got pushed back to 10 minutes, etc. So that seemed like a mess. Target was like a whole free for all of like first come first serve. It seems like the Wild West out there. And even when people were able to get orders somehow on Target, so a good chunk of them were getting like fraud alerts on their bank app or whatever. So a lot of them got their payments canceled because they were getting fraud alerts from their Target order. People were like, just try again. I was like, it seemed like a mess. Best Buy was an interesting case where they didn't actually open up their pre-orders at 9 p.m. Pacific. They have waited half an hour on this, and people are going insane because they didn't announce this. They announced that they would be up at 9 p.m. that time Pacific, and people were like, "Where's Best Buy? Best Buy's not live yet. Oh my god!" So no one knew until like half an hour. It's like people were like, "Oh my god, it's live, it's live." So Best Buy was really funny because my experience, and I was kind of keeping track of like other people's similar experiences. The pre-order button was live, and when you click that pre-order button, it would have this quote unquote online line queue where it says like stay on this page, wait, we'll update you when you're ready, etc. But there was no timer. It was just like that loading bar of death, like a circle loading bar. And like it just had no indicator of like when it would change. And what people found out behind the scenes as they were looking more into it is like it was actually a fake line, because all that was doing behind the scenes was spamming add to cart on the cert of it. So it wasn't actually like a line position or anything. Like you can even still do it, but even if you weren't logged in into the site. So it's just an interface window for them to spam add to cart behind the scenes, and it was completely random whether it would go through or not. Now, I was getting, I was starting to really question. I was like, is this really gonna work? So I had this on my internet browser desktop going on. And I was like, I'm gonna go install the Best Buy app on my phone. I've never done this for any outlet on my phone. And I'm gonna go sign in. I'm gonna go sign in.
That's a good play.
And add the card on there. And then so I was also in the queue for the phone on it as well, as well as my browser. But after like 15 to 20-ish minutes, the browser was still stuck, but the phone app went through. So like they made me re-log in, and then it added the cart after that, and you have 10 minutes to check out from then on. So I did my payment info, then they gave me the URL to open up my bank app and authorize that. It was all pretty seamless and easy. And then after that I was done. I had it pre-ordered, I got the confirmation email, etc. And the browser desktop window tab was still in that infinite loading of that. So if I didn't install that Best Buy app, I'd be completely fucked. So I was like, that's crazy. That I had to go through the app, even though the browser desktop has been waiting forever. It never worked ever. And then go for it.
It seemed like throughout the night they had like a small like little groups of allocations for like Best Buy and stuff, because they kept coming back.
Interesting.
I actually know a lot of people who ended up like eventually getting theirs on Best Buy by just waiting for like in the like 2 to 3 hours after like it launched.
Okay.
But like
that's dangerous. That's a gambling.
It is, yes, but also like I'm hearing a lot more success stories for this than Switch One. Like everyone I know who wanted one has one, like got a pre-order.
Cool.
Which that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
If
we're not saying that like I'm sure there's gonna be like many listeners that weren't able to get a pre-order as well. So there's not to say that everyone who wanted one got one. It's just like our personal experience of the people that we know.
Well,
more
relatively
speaking,
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then after that, I went through the same process to get a Pro controller. I'm basically paying Nintendo $90 to be able to press that power button to make that the Switch 2 on from a Pro controller, because if you can use a Switch 1 Pro controller on it, but it cannot wake up the console, and that's how I wake up my console set up right now. So I'm basically paying them $90 to be able to use a power button. But it's also because I generally like the feel of Pro controllers instead of the Joy-Cons. But the bulk of that $90 is to like wake it from sleep from a Pro controller. So like overall, it took a little bit over an hour, not strictly just 1 hour, but just a little over for that entire experience. And I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm wiping my hands clean of this. I'm not gonna look back at it until like until the launch date. Some Walmart and Target pre-orders got like pushed back like in their confirmation emails like the day after. I know like Canadian Costco had like might have like canceled a whole bunch of pre-orders on their end because they ran out of stock and they couldn't fulfill all the pre-orders or something like that. There's been like some reports the day after of like some pre-order situations at some outlets being changing, but as far as Best Buy is concerned, they haven't like reported anything back in terms of like if anything went wrong or anything. So that was like my experience. Before we get to James on the GameStop one, Cullen, what was your experience? 'Cause I know you were in the trenches with me on that.
You mentioned a little thing, but I was like, oh, I'm not going to have 3 tabs open for a bunch of different sites. I'm going to be normal. And that's commendable, genuinely. I'm glad that you got one by focusing on your one site. On my end, I have 3 monitors. Each one had a different store website on it. I had Walmart on the left one, Target on the right one, Best Buy in the middle. Somehow, I ended up with 3 pre-orders.
Holy crap.
One of those was on accident, and I don't know how it worked. But yeah, so to kind of mirror yours, midnight comes around for me. I'm locked in, I'm ready. I got to get one because in my mind, I'm like, okay, I need to try to get at least 2 because I want my girlfriend to have a pre-order as well. She was also logged in and she was trying to like, get one, but just in case she couldn't, I just wanted that ready just in case. Walmart, I was stuck in a line, site wasn't moving, whatever. Target was weird. I got the Target app, so I was trying to add that to my cart while I was going, and Target, I don't know what was going on with Target. I initially basically just tried to get the first one I could get my hands on, which was the non-bundle. And so I have it in my cart, and I'm trying to just pay for the damn thing. I'm mashing the pay button on the app a billion times. It's not going through.
I would be super queasy about doing that. You were a braver man than me on that.
I was locked in, and it kept saying it was just like, oh, the payment didn't work, and I was like, this is frustrating. But like, I put it on my credit card, and my limit's like pretty decent, so like I wasn't like too stressed out anyway. Yeah, it would resolve itself no matter what. I'm not like my card was like fully paid off and everything, so I was just trying to get it. I was just trying to get it to go through, and it wouldn't. And eventually, it said, "Hey, your card's empty. Sorry, it didn't like." Try again. And I was like, fine. And then I saw a bundle come up, and I was then trying to get the bundle added. I kept going. I think it took me like 10 minutes, and eventually I got the bundle added. And I was like, that's great. I got a bundle on Target. Cool. Let me look for this confirmation email. And I find one, but it was for 20 minutes before, and it was for the default model that did not go through. But it it somehow purchased the default model, even though it never said it did. And then I had 2 pre-orders on Target, and I was like, I was gonna call it a night, but then Best Buy came back up, and I was like, ideally, I want this at Best Buy. Like, I don't want to deal with Target shipping. Like, I'm a Switch fanatic, I guess you could say. I think that'd be pretty fair, especially if anyone listening has read my articles. I'm the Switch review guy.
Can't you get like Target pre-orders in store? Because when I got my PS5 from Target online, I picked it up in store. So
this one did not give me any options for that.
I didn't hear about in pick up Target options either. I only heard that for Best Buy. And not
interesting.
Yeah. Because I looked. Because ideally, yes, I would have loved to do that, even if I had to wait the next day. But. So I started dealing with the Best Buy thing. It's very funny that you mentioned that's how the line actually works. And I guess this ended up working for me because I was really worried that like it wouldn't. They would be actual lines because I ended up sitting in the line for the bundle, the Mario, the default one, the bundle, and then a little idea I had that I thought a lot of people wouldn't try is Best Buy offered a bundle with the Pro controller. It's the default Switch model, but it has a Pro controller with it, and I don't know how much it was. It wasn't like that much. I think it was like $530 something. It was a pretty good deal. And that's the one I ended up getting. And so Best Buy ended up working well. I want to go at midnight and pick mine up. But now I'm like, well, I gotta find friends who want these other 2 Switches because I want to make sure all my I think scalping sucks. I think if you scalp, you're a terrible person. So I'm literally just asking friends right now and be like, hey, I want to sell you this for MSRP if you want the thing. And they're like, oh, I already got one. I got a pre-order.
Yeah. I know someone that, I don't know if you know them. I don't think you do, but they're one of Locke's friends, and she's been trying to get one, hasn't got one yet. So that might work out. Like my roommate is probably gonna take one of them, and I'll just be like, because my Mario Kart bundle, and then I'll just be like, yeah, I'll sell it to you, but I want the Mario Kart key. That's mine.
Question: when you said default model, isn't in the US there is only one model?
No, there's 2.
Well, I meant like because there's the bundle, and then there's the just the Switch by itself.
Oh, that's what you meant. There's the 2 SKUs.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. Yeah. But interestingly, so far, Best Buy, I've heard from a lot of people, has been fine. My girlfriend's actually got canceled like today.
Oh, interesting.
Because she got a Best Buy one, and we were just gonna both go to Best Buy. But I guess like if you're listening, maybe check to make sure your Best Buy bundle hasn't been, or your Best Buy Switch hasn't been canceled. For hers, it said it was like the card was like not good, which is really like weird. That the fact that they would just cancel your like your Switch pre-order instead of just being like, hey, do you want to offer another form of payment or something?
Yeah.
I forget what it was, but I had something. It was like Steam Deck or maybe Switch One, where some credit cards will be like trying to protect you, and they'll be like, "We blocked your transaction. Are you sure this was you?" And then you're like, "Yes, that was me. I was trying to purchase this." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Now you can purchase it." But then by the time you go through all that, it's like, "Oh, now it's out of stock." And you're like, damn it, I've had that happen before.
Yep.
Yeah. But overall, it was like maybe like an hour and a half of craziness. But it went better than I expected. It's just what, like with all these things, there's an initial like chaos period, and then again, most people I know who were like committed to actually getting a pre-order, like actually were serious about wanting to get one, and who actually like stayed up at least like the 2 to 3 hours in that online period, they got one. So I heard a lot. I saw a lot of people who gave up after like an hour, and it's basically that's the equivalent of like walking out of like line at like GameStop when you're about to like walk up, where it's just like it. If you couldn't get one, I do feel bad, but so far the success rate is really high, and
it's a
that
natural
is
part of the process. Like some like definitely like some people will like if they're willing to commit the time and effort, they're more likely to.
Whereas, like, again, with Switch One, I remember that. The only reason I got a Switch One pre-order is that I worked at GameStop at the time, and my manager was cool. I remember seeing no one with a Switch One for the first, like, couple months.
I remember when I got my Switch One pre-order, I tried everywhere, and then I remember it was the same thing where, like, GameStop was the day after online. I actually managed to get one online from GameStop, which is crazy, because I don't know anyone that got one online from GameStop this time.
I have an old person's perspective on this. I worked at Target during the first year of the Wii. And the Wii, whenever we got like a shipment in of like 40, 50 Wiis, like I was working at the electronics desk. This is back in 2007, 8 or whatever. And like we'd have them stacked up beyond the desks, and like I don't know, it was like every other week when we get a stack in, there'd always be like a mob of people, and we'd always be sold out. And this went on for like, if you remember the Wii launch, like 2 years.
Yeah, that thing.
Obviously, the Wii kind of like successfully broke beyond just like
Yeah,
the gaming community. It was like everyone wanted one.
very mainstream
Uh,
because they wanted to be sports.
Yeah, so I worked at Target back in those days in late high school, early college, and it was very chaotic and kind of weird.
Um, James, you are the next combatant in the Switch 2 pre-order experience. You did the GameStop route, and they opened up the morning after in the Pacific.
Yep.
Both in store and online. You went in store and lined up for it. Tell us your experience. Oh, James, hello.
James?
Yeah, sorry. For whatever reason, Discord's like every so often has been cutting out for like 5 seconds. Should be fine now. Yeah, I went to GameStop like about an hour and a half before open, and the GameStop I went to had 80 units. I think they had like 53 of the bundle and like 29 of the standalone.
GameStop actually like had notices, like papers they put on the
Yes,
door
they
saying
did.
how much units they had of both models of both the
Yeah.
console itself and then the Mario Kart World one. And usually the trend was they had more of the bundle with the Mario Kart World rather than the console.
I haven't
Standalone.
seen a single GameStop report that they didn't have like something like double the Mario Kart bundles.
Yeah, go on.
So yeah, I got there about an hour and a half before open. There was already about 30 people in the line. But by the time it opened, there was like maybe 60, 65 people in the line.
How early did you come in? And what time did it open? What time did you get in line?
I got in line right around like 9:20 and they opened at 11.
Okay. Okay, wow.
So they actually didn't immediately sell out. And the thing is that the reason I did GameStop was one, I wanted to pick it up in store, similar to you, but also there was a really good trade-in deal for like if you traded in an Xbox Series X. So I was able to trade that in, and then because I was a pro member, and because I also put some of that towards Rune Factory, they gave me $455 for that Xbox.
Damn, that
That's the
seems like
most
a
value
lot.
you could ever get for an Xbox.
I paid $400 for that Xbox from a buddy of mine 3.5 years ago.
That's that feels like unheard of because for the longest time, like the GameStop trade-in deals that you'd hear from people like for many years now, it's like I paid like I don't know $120 for this, they'll give you back like $30. Thanks.
Yeah. Like legitimately, they did not make money off of that, and I feel like I screwed GameStop over with that because definitely they didn't intend for that additional like $35 to be part of it. But people reported it worked, and I was like, I'll try it, and it did.
Okay. Yeah.
To put in perspective for everyone listening, if I hadn't gone for the Mario Kart bundle, they would have paid me to swap my Series X for a Switch 2.
That's insane.
Because the tax is calculated after the trade credits deducted. So literally, they would have paid me to swap my Xbox for a Switch 2. But yeah, it was a very pleasant experience. There was more than enough consoles for everyone. I didn't have to get there too early. And even when I had to come back later, like after like I put down the reservation because there was only one person on the register, so they weren't able to do
the trade-in credit thing for your Xbox.
back at like 1:30. They still had like pre-orders available. Like there was somebody to my left when I was doing the trade-in that was like, "Hey, do you have a Mario Kart bundle?" And said, "Yeah, we have a few left." And it's like obviously they sold really well because there was like 60 people in line before they opened, but like GameStop had plenty of stock. Don't know what else to say.
Okay, so yeah, so everyone seems like in your area, like the ones who
Yeah.
lined up, and seems like a little bit time after they had.
Shout out to the random person I was talking about RPGs with. A couple of people I was talking about RPGs with in the line before it opened, and started talking about Saga because we were talking about Bravely Default and general Square Enix stuff for obvious reasons because Bravely Default's remaster was one of the things you could pre-order. And then Saga got brought up. I said, "Hey, have you ever played Saga Scarlet Grace? And then apparently that person bought Saga Scarlet Grace specifically because of the review I wrote.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's small world. Hey, good job.
Yeah.
Good job,
You
person,
ask
and good
him-
job, James.
Did you ask if he was disappointed or was he happy with his purchase?
Oh, it's one of his favorite RPGs of all time.
Damn, that's sick. That's awesome. So, yeah. Okay, yeah. I mean, so it seems like for at least for the ones in here, the Switch 2 pre-order experience has been relatively smooth. I know, Chow, you also got one just recently, and you went through Amazon Canada, I believe, because I don't know if they offer
Yeah, I
Switch
went-
2s on US Amazon.
Yeah,
I
I
thought
went
people
through the Amazon Canada one. So basically what happens on the first day, okay, they have Switch pre-orders, but it's in like 9 a.m. Eastern time. So I had to wake up at 7 a.m. trying to pre-order from Best Buy, and it was a shit show because as soon as you line up, it told you, "Oh, we're in queue, so please wait." And that queue took 40 minutes to go away. And when you go in, it's a blank page because the site crashed. And then they come back till like 2 hours later. And then when I come back, it's like as soon as like I was trying to hit the checkout, it went to that queue again. It's like, please wait. And then you're like,
Yeah, it's
and the queue's over,
man.
and you're like, it's gone, it's sold out. It's like, what do I do? Right? So
Yeah,
so I thought it was game over for me. I told my friend I was gonna
the
line
Best
up.
Buy
and-
queue is just mischievous, dude. It's devious. That's some dark work.
It's a
right
complete
there.
shit show. It's like don't trust the queue. Don't do it.
I'm surprised you managed getting it because, like, everyone I know in Canada, they just gave up on Amazon completely and were banking on Costco. And they managed getting an order, and then I think a day later, everything just got cancelled, and they're really, really annoyed about
I
that.
heard the Canada pre-orders are just relative to like the US situation, just like were just like a absolute shit show for the most part.
So what happened after like that? It's like I checked on Amazon just yesterday, and it says like we're accepting pre-orders for invitation. It's like, do you want to join this invitation? It's like, sure, okay. Got an invitation at 4 a.m. because I love staying up late like a degenerate. So it's like, okay, got it, purchase, and I'm done.
That's so funny. That's like Amazon Canada is offering this, but only for degenerates who are still alive at that hour. That is funny. And Mikhail, did you also pre-order one?
So how it works, like there's no Nintendo doesn't exist in India. So what happens with pre-orders here is you gotta rely on like import stores and stuff. So I've just told the store I buy from regularly. Like I went today to pick up my physical copies of Ninja Gaiden 2 Black and Expedition 33, and I just told him like, just make sure my console's here on day one, please. I need it for work. So yeah, and I also one more thing which has happened recently, I think for a lot of people on this podcast is everyone's buying Rune Factory now that we know that it's a proper physical release on Switch too.
Yep.
We'll talk about that in a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
But
Like basically,
there's some much needed
yeah,
clarification that Marvelous gave that like
yeah.
their
So
titles actually have the
basically,
game
yeah.
data on the cartridge.
The only thing which I haven't decided yet, or I don't know yet, is whether I'm getting just the console or the Mario Kart bundle. And usually I'd be skipping the Pro controller because I've not had good luck with them. I have 4 out of 4 Nintendo Switch 1 Pro controllers that all drift. But I will give this another go wearing my clown makeup. So yeah, that's my status right now.
Yeah, wow. Thankfully, I mean, knocking on wood, that like my Switch One Pro controller is held up. I mean, I guess I won't need it much longer. It's there. It's still alive. But yeah, so
But yeah, like I'm definitely trying my best to get one of those at launch because like just like salivating at the number of ports coming out to cover. So yeah.
yeah, it's gonna be a lot.
Mood.
And luckily, I mean, like, there's more sane people on the podcast here, like Brian and Adam's. Like, we'll just get one when we can
Yeah.
like walk it in a store and get one that's readily available. You know, you're holding down the line of sanity. Thank God.
Well, I
mean,
have a GameStop gift card from like when I traded in my PS4s. I had a regular and a Pro when the PS5 came out, and it was just too much space, and it was all backwards compatible. So I'm like, let me trade in my PS4, so I have a GameStop gift card. So, but then my GameStop near me like went under. They like because they completely overextended. Like there was way too many. Like why is there 5 within 7 blocks? So like I was like, oh, I don't want to deal with their website. I don't want to like, so I'll just get it when it's in stock at whatever GameStop's closest to me. And I don't know if that's a good gamble or not. It sounds like if I'm patient, maybe it'll be good. It's the sort of thing where if Intelligent Systems had a Switch 2 exclusive or Monolith, or if Metroid Prime 4 not Echoes. Why did I say Echoes? Was exclusive to Switch 2. Maybe I would, but even that's not coming out at launch. So that's kind of like why I'm willing to.
You just have like
wait.
no good like
But
incentive. There's no compelling exclusive right now that like you really want to get at the moment. Makes
Definitely
sense.
smarter than me. Like I'm just
Oh, yeah.
happy to. I'm gonna like get Street Fighter and Yakuza 0.
You,
and
you don't want to
fight.
get you don't want to get hit Switch 2 exclusive Welcome Tour. You don't want that.
No,
I do
I'm
like
not
how Mikhail's solution was just he knows a guy. That's how
I
he
love
does
it
know a guy.
actually.
Yeah,
I know
I
a
did
guy
that for the
too.
Switch one also. I did that for Switch one, except I didn't buy it day one because they didn't have the neon model in stock. They only had the gray one, and I just decided I want the neon one. So I waited like 3 weeks more for that.
Yeah. Over there in India, and India's like, yeah, I got a guy for the Switch 2, like under the table.
Yeah, like I know a guy too. It's just like he's in Japan right now, so I can't really ask him for help. But he literally shops so much at like GameStop, so people would just like call him to get first dibs because this guy
Wait, that's
just buys
all. Like you
everything.
have like a mercenary dealer there. Holy fuck! Damn, India and Canada seems cooler on that front.
It is weird how Amazon US and Nintendo, ever since like the 3DS days, always seems to have like a weird relationship of will they, won't they stock, and if they do, like how reliable are they? How much stock do they get? Because there was a while there where you just could not buy consoles from Amazon for like 3DSs or DS, 3DS. I forget exactly when that window
I think it
was, but it was
happened.
a few
I think it
years
happened
there.
during the 3DS, and they also stopped selling eShop credit and games for a bit, and then they
Yeah.
started getting them again. And then again, it happened with the Switch. And I thought actually that it happened and they got back together, and it's happened again now. But the thing is, like right now, you can't do anything with Switch 2 on Amazon except for like some third-party games. But I thought when Echoes of Wisdom on Switch 1 was releasing last year, I thought Amazon and Nintendo had made up or whatever, because I did see listings for that. But I think Warrior 64 clarified that those were like the UAE import, or like the PEGI rated Europe stock or something like
Oh,
that,
okay.
which people had to buy because like some people just buy on Amazon only. So like it doesn't matter if you get the game like a UAE version, a Singapore version, or like Germany, except for the box art. It's all the same English build. But yeah, I thought they had gotten back together then, but clearly not. So like I've been buying, like I usually buy eShop credit for like buying games from Amazon, and I haven't been able to do that for a while now. So I've been like getting my friend to hook me up from Costco. So yeah, it's still I wonder how this is gonna affect Nintendo. Like obviously the launch quarter or launch year also I'd say is not gonna be a big deal because they'll just sell through whatever they have. But Amazon's a huge retailer in the US. So like not having your first party games, accessories, and your console there, I wonder how that's gonna work out for them.
I think a lot
Yeah.
of like Switch people have kind of just like stopped using Amazon in general because they used to be great for offering like, and like this is just from my experience, and I've heard this from other people as well, so I'm not saying this is like for sure but like they can no longer even guarantee like release day shipping for most of their like Switch games. So most of the people I know who buy physical Switch games just don't even bother with Amazon anymore.
That's a good point,
Yeah,
because even if you have Amazon Prime, like I have
Mhm.
Amazon Prime, it's you still can't get release day delivery. It's like a few days later at best.
And
So
it's like at
yeah,
that
that is a
point
problem.
I might as well just walk like and that's why my retailer of choice ended up becoming Best Buy, because it's like why would I pay you why would I pay for Prime for this
Yeah.
and then have to wait all this extra time just to get my game when I could just go into a Best Buy and get it day one. I don't know if y'all remember this. Remember when like Amazon used to give you a discount on release day like games?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah. Same
great.
here.
It was so
20% off.
good.
I remember
Wasn't it
when it used to
20%?
be.
It
I
was
remember,
it was really
yeah,
good.
I remember like Gamers Club Unlocked when it was 20% off all pre-orders, and then also additionally specific games would give you like a $10 reward certificate for pre-ordering them. I remember back in the day I got like Gears of War 4 for basically like $35 or some shit like that. It was insane.
And they stopped doing that, but for a while it was like, okay, I could still like get my games on launch. So for some games it was just more convenient to just have it be delivered because I would like be busy or I didn't want to go into a store. And I guess thank you Amazon for being so incompetent that you're getting me out of the house more. I really appreciate it.
So I think that's 5 of the 7 of us ready for Switch 2. Everyone got in through either Best Buy or is it Best Buy, Target, and Amazon? Those are the 3 winners. No, I guess James did GameStop. So I guess we
GameStop,
got the
yeah.
whole gamut here. Yeah.
Some people did Walmart. I'd feel weird about like trusting Walmart with that, but maybe they're like, I don't know. I just did.
I wouldn't have
bother.
expected Costco to be like a prime choice, but I guess because you have to have a membership, maybe Costco and Sam's are like the secret sauce for some of this stuff. I remember
need to
back. I don't know if
hear
they
about-
still do it, but I remember like PS4 era, maybe like PS4, Xbox One. I'm trying to think of that if I have the generation right. Where Kohl's actually like was the place no one thought to check for consoles.
I vaguely remember that somehow. Yeah, you're reminding me because it was so insignificant. And, like I kind of just wanted to give it a shot in the dark. Like that Switch 2 night, I went to like Fred Meyer because that's like a local grocer by me that has an electronics section. I was like, just on the off chance and they might have it. I might as well just keep like an eye on it just somehow. And like, of course, they didn't have it. It worked out in the end. James and I are ready to go meet up and have our rooftop pool party with our Switch 2s playing Mario Kart.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to mention what game we are getting day one, or do you want to save that for when we discuss the physical situation?
I mean, I
I'd be
don't
down.
know. I don't know what game I'm gonna play. Like, I have the
Okay.
Mario Kart in it yet. I'm probably gonna get Bravely Default, I imagine, because that's like exclusive for probably timed exclusive. But I don't know what else I'm gonna get besides that, other than just testing out other Switch games.
I think Cullen and I are going to do the same thing: physical copies of Cyberpunk and Rune Factory.
Yeah, the exact same launch titles.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna honestly like Cyberpunk was going to be my game, and like I'm not even huge into Rune Factory, but the new one did look interesting. And then seeing that that's basically the only RPG with an actual physical release.
It's about sending a message.
Yeah, for real though.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I'll play this game. I'll like play it for the first like little bit and then go like, wait a second, I hate Rune Factory, and then like put it on my shelf.
Yeah, those are fighting words.
Unless he accidentally loves it, then
Oh yeah, honestly, this one seems like they actually gave them money, so I will probably like it more than 5.
James, how about you? What does your Switch 2 launch game lineup look like at the moment?
Rune Factory, and that's the only thing that I bought because I don't know what else I might get for either like to cover for here or elsewhere. So it's like Rune Factory I got because it's a physical copy, a proper physical copy. Everything else, it's just play it by ear. Play it by ear.
I was kind of torn. I wanted to buy the limited edition for the OG Switch version, but they announced that they were going to be delayed because they couldn't get the fan to make for the part of the limited edition.
Okay, so we might as well get into it. So we might as well get into it now because you mentioned it. So to give people context, first, a lot of people here are talking about supporting Rune Factory because of physical games, and the reason they're saying that is because so far, but if people remember from the Switch 2 Direct presentation, there was this whole hubbub about like that some physical, quote unquote, physical copies of Switch games will be game key cards instead, in which they won't actually have game data inside the cartridge themselves. You put it into the Switch 2 and they download the data off the internet to actually get your game instead of having that game data on the cartridge itself. So a lot of people have that rubs them the wrong way, understandably so, because that means they don't really own the video game that they just purchased. So there was a lot of confusion around like which titles, especially third-party titles, would be game key cards versus actual game cartridges with the game data inside the cartridges themselves. So Marvelous came out this week and said, all their titles will actually have the game data inside the cartridge themselves, like Rune Factory, Guardians of Ozma. I forgot what else did they mention.
They said Story of Seasons
and Daemon X Machina too. Yeah.
Awesome.
And the
So,
Daemon X Machina thing is notable because the Japanese release of that is a key card. So the
All of
Western
their
release is actually.
all of the
Yeah,
Japanese
so-
releases are key cards.
Wow.
Like
Oh,
Guardians
is it
of
Rune
Ozma.
Factory as well?
Yeah, Rune Factory as well, and Story of Seasons
Oh,
as well.
that's crazy.
That's
so
the
there's
reason
even
why.
like discrepancies between like the Japanese releases and then the overseas release. So that's
That's the
really-
reason why Rune Factory on Switch 2 is $70 for the physical copy, is because they have to charge that much, because the reason why, like word is that the reason why so many of these developers and publishers are going with key cards is that there's only really the one Switch 2 card, like game card you can get, and they cost like $16 or something.
Yeah.
so
That's
you-
pretty,
when
that's
I
pretty
heard that,
costly.
yep.
Yeah, from their end for manufacturing costs and such.
Yeah,
And
so
if that's
account for
true-
the like Nintendo cut, the retail cut, it's like
Mhm.
unless you're charging like $70, you're not making a profit off of a game that's on an actual like Switch 2 game card.
Yeah.
There's one more thing, like so the two notable releases which a lot of people are excited for, like Bravely Default, because that's like exclusive and it's Bravely Default, and the other one is Street Fighter. And the thing with Street Fighter and Bravely Default is both of them are key card releases, which means they just have the game license on the cartridge. You can sell that and like trade it and all that. It's treated like a physical game, which you have to just download all the data as a patch. But the thing is, both of these are distributed by Nintendo, so it's not like you know how Capcom does their own releases, like, or even like how 2K does NBA on Switch 1, where you have like 2 or 3 GB on the cartridge and you have to download everything. This is actually being distributed by Nintendo, and I'm wondering whether this means that both Capcom and Square Enix were gonna just do digital only for these releases, but because Nintendo wants more of a retail presence, they decided to step in and at least like have this option available. So that's just something I've been thinking about, because they probably want to have a lot of retail presence for launch, even if it is key cards. But yeah, that these two are specifically like Nintendo distributed, but Marvelous is like going above and beyond. In fact, they even like Chow mentioned the limited edition for Rune Factory. Like Story of Seasons is actually getting a Nintendo Switch 2 limited edition and a Nintendo Switch 1 limited edition. So that's good to see.
Yeah. So and then Chow was mentioning earlier. So there's a pretty interesting post from Marvelous USA's social media account this week talking about specifically the premium Earth Dancer edition of Rune Factory Guardians of Ozma. So that's like the special fancy collector's edition of it, and they were being very very transparent about it, saying, hey, this might not be ready in time for the worldwide release on June 5th specifically because the US tariff situation is affecting the Sensu folding fan inside the package, and they went through like kind of the process of like, while many of the other things in that collector's edition are not manufactured in China, the Sensu folding fan is, and that if they were to ship it as is, it would get heavily affected by the U.S. China trade war tariff situation, and it would take a tremendous loss if they were to uh, ship that out as is. So they've been saying that like it might not come in time for the worldwide June 5th release. They haven't mentioned like an alternate date of like, or other date of like what other date it might get pushed back to, or because there's a whole scheduling situation of like, if your product leaves the harbor at X date, that means they will not get affected by this tariff. But if they do ship out from the harbor at X date or after, then they'll be subject to tariffs. On top of like the whole seemingly like daily situation of it like changing, a lot of this is still up in the air on Marvelous's side on that whole situation. So good on like Marvelous USA President Ken Berry to come out and be very, very transparent to consumers about like, hey, we might not have like the super awesome collector's edition of this in time for release. I know I might have been skipping on some of the details there, but if anyone wants to jump in and hop in to clarify, some of the details that they shared, feel free as well.
That's pretty it. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. So yeah,
The transparency is like greatly appreciated, and they don't have all the answers, like you said, like a new date but they're saying like people have already pre-ordered this at a certain price. We're not going to say you need to give us more to cover the tariff. Like they're that's where their scruple, that's where they're drawing the line.
absolutely.
So yeah, it's
Mhm.
I
it's
think
appreciated to see.
there's
I
one
just
good
thought,
thing
like,
they're
at least,
doing
like,
is.
they're in
Sorry, go
production
ahead,
way long.
Chow.
No, I
Go
just
ahead,
think like these items would be in production way longer since they opened the pre-orders like way long time ago before these clearance hit. But I guess they're just like started making them now. I guess.
The logistics on it,
Yeah.
like it's always going to be weird on that because they need to
Yeah.
take pre-orders at the end to know how much they have to make. Um, It's not something
They
that's like
also did this.
predetermined.
They also said that because they have Rune Factory is getting a Switch 2 and a Switch 1 physical, but the limited edition is just for the Switch 1. And they said that because of like quality, like QA or QC or something like that, they couldn't manage doing a physical edition for the limited bundle for Switch 2, but they are offering just the goodies on the Marvelous USA store. So like, Switch 2 people can just like whoever want to play it on Switch 2 can just buy the Switch 2 physical, and you can just pay a bit and get just the extra stuff, not the game, from
That's
their
really
web
cool.
store. And I guess that also applies to people who play the game on Steam. So yeah, that's a good option always. I remember when I think not Exceed, sorry, NIS America did this thing for Ease 8 when they did the PS4 and Vita versions. They did a code in box PC collector's edition. I think that was the last time they did that for like a Falcom game. So yeah,
Yeah,
like
I think the reason why I don't remember that is because they don't ship to Canada, so I was like, laughing burgers. That's why I like forgot they did that. Oh man.
no, I have my Falcom limited editions with a common friend between James and me. He has like 5 of them now. I don't know when I'm gonna get them. So yeah,
So I think we can close the book now on the Switch 2 pre-order, the Switch 2 immediate stuff going on, and
until
I
next
think
week.
until whatever happens this upcoming week out of nowhere. Yeah, we have
I
quite
think
a bit to
worth
talk about. And
mentioning
yeah.
at some point the weird upgrade path or no upgrade path situation on some podcasts, because
I think he did. I think Mikhail, you mentioned this a little
Oh
bit,
yeah,
right?
so there's been, I guess, yeah, that's a good point to bring
we
up
got
right now because
confirmations though.
we
Yeah.
have new news. So
Oh, okay.
Raidou Remastered. So first they confirmed that the physical release is a key card. So yeah, boo for that. They confirmed the resolution and frame rate, which we might get to like when we talk about the news. But Raidou Remastered and like not an RPG, but Sonic Shadow Generations, which I know a few of us have played. Both of these are getting switched to native versions, but they don't have an upgrade path. So if you bought Sonic Shadow Generations on Switch a few months ago, you cannot pay to upgrade your game. You have to buy the whole thing and buy all the DLC again. For Raidou Remastered, even though both of them are like it's releasing simultaneously on Switch 1 and Switch 2, there's no upgrade path available. In fact, I think they even confirmed there's no save data transfer
Yep,
between both,
they did.
Oh
which is like
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
so this is pretty bad because like when we had the cross-gen period for Sega Atlus games on PS4, I think almost all of them except for Persona 5 Royal, which was like 2.5 years later for PS5. I think for the simultaneous stuff, you just could transfer your save from PS4 to PS5, and they all
Mhm.
had a free upgrade available. Like the Yakuza games did, Persona 3 Reload definitely did. So yeah, like that's even Metaphor did. I remember you could sync your save. Like so I don't know what's causing this because it.
It's
I
all
think
Sega games.
besides, yeah, it's all Sega games. I think the others, like even 2K is letting you pay and upgrade Civilization 7. Like I bought Civilization 7 physically on Switch, so I can pay $10 and upgrade it to the Switch 2 version and get the actual game, not the nonsense which they shipped on Switch 1. So yeah, like it's just weird that Sega's like they just announced 5 games all releasing for like 50 US, I think, and all of them are key cards. Even Yakuza Zero Director's Cut is a key card, $50. So
The
yeah.
funniest one of that
Crazy.
is they're re-releasing Puyo Puyo Tetris 2. Did you guys hear anything about this?
Yeah, I saw that and I couldn't. So first I thought they were bringing some modes from maybe the Apple Arcade Puyo Puyo game, which I think
Nope.
only James and I have played, but it's some
Yeah.
completely different thing they're doing, and there's no upgrade path available, and like it's a 4
The
GB game as well. So like, what are you doing?
the only
Yeah,
thing
it's
I
like
can
you're gonna
think
spend like
of
$40 for
Yeah,
this.
Yeah,
You
the
get
only thing I can think of, well, the only thing I can see that the like Puyo Puyo Tetris 2 Switch 2 version has is you can use mouse mode to play now. It's like that feels like it's broken, and I wouldn't want to play Puyo Puyo that way.
they also have it so like you can do like co-op board play now with like it, but it's just like you're asking me to pay $40 for this game that I besides the mouse stuff, I do not see what the extra hardware of the Switch 2 could really do for this game. I'm sorry, this is a bit scummy.
Puyo Puyo Tetris 2 could have run on the Vita if they still let them release games on the Vita when it came out.
yeah.
Mhm.
And it ran perfectly on the Switch 1. It had good HD rumble as well. In fact, I remember I got the game on all consoles at launch, and I was
Man, that
disappointed it had
PS5
no
version's
haptic.
HD Rumble
Yeah,
was no, I mean
yeah.
it had HD Rumble on PS5.
I
Wait, no,
feel like I
no.
remember it did not. It did not.
But yeah, no, yeah, it didn't because it had because I remember when I got Puyo Puyo Tetris 1 at the Switch, like around the Switch 1's launch, that was like the showcase for HD Rumble because
Yeah.
like you had the hard click when you like dropped a Tetramino, and then you had like a kind of like squishy like rumble feeling when you popped a Puyo, and I was like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, so that was disappointing when they did that, and I don't know, like as someone who owns Puyo Puyo Tetris 1 and Puyo Puyo Tetris 2 on every single platform, including getting the Japanese version of Puyo Puyo Tetris 1, I do not care about this release at all. So
There
yeah.
is there is absolutely no reason to get this. If you want to play a new Puyo Puyo game, a properly new Puyo Puyo game, buy an Apple TV on eBay and pay for a month of Apple Arcade. That'll be a better use of your money and time than buying another copy of Puyo Puyo Tetris 2 just for Switch 2. Unironically.
Maybe you don't have it on any other system, but also just like keycards suck. Don't do that to yourself. Love yourself.
Oh,
Good podcast title.
But anyway,
yeah. Thank you for the clarification. I totally just missed the news of all the upgrade, the changes to the upgrade or clarification to the upgrade stuff, especially for on the Sega side this week. Because there's been so much that's been happening this week that we're gonna get into.
One
so thank you for the
tiny
clarification.
tangent is that
Yeah.
like Suikoden 1-2 remaster doesn't have an upgrade, doesn't have save
Same thing, yeah.
transfer.
So that
it's a
hasn't been
digital
announced.
card.
That hasn't been announced by Konami yet. It's just like Japanese retailers have put it up, and obviously it's real because like there's actual box art and reliable retailers have put it up. But I don't know why they haven't announced it yet. And it's supposedly going to be a launch day thing, and it's also supposedly going to be like 1440p 60 FPS on Switch 2 like docked, which is good because the base game like on Switch 1 it's 30 FPS. I think Colin said it was fine at 30 FPS, but yeah, it was still 30 FPS compared to everything else. So yeah,
for that one, I'm like, that game looks pretty good on Switch 1. I like, it's pixel art. The pixel art looks good. They're not gonna do it, but like, just put out an update for the Switch 1 version. Like, just unlock the frame rate a little bit. Suikoden does not need that, like, all that extra resolution. Those games look fine.
I think the only thing about resolution in a sprite game is you'd want the scaling to be correct so it doesn't like. You remember what happened with the what was the Sonic release which they screwed up the scaling? I think it was
Origins?
Sonic Origins. Yeah, it was the Sonic Origins thing where they didn't have the pixel perfect scaling, so everything just looked blurry regardless of how you played it. So I guess for that, like having native resolution scaling for a 2D game would be nice, but we'll see how that one goes. I just hope that Konami hasn't announced it for the West because maybe they are working behind the scenes to like offer some sort of upgrade path. But yeah, it is unfortunate that you have all these games that just came out, which, if the Switch 2 had come out earlier, they'd probably just be cross-gen from the start. But now I'm sure a lot of people bought them on Switch 1, and now you're like, if you want to play it with 60 FPS or like you want to just play the native with better, higher resolution, I'd say you just have to pay $50 again for it. That's not cool.
Yeah, that
No.
doesn't feel good at all.
Like, how much of we can move on, but like just kind of like it's so frustrating because that presentation, the announcement presentation, the hardware specs, so much of the Switch 2 looks fantastic. Like they are looking to put out a wonderful portable device, and so many of these decisions on how like games are priced, how third parties are going to be working physically, it's just like it's really deflating. It sucks that there has to be like for every cool thing with Switch 2, there's something like this.
You know the thing which bugs me, the only thing which bugs me about the hardware, like I'm completely with you. It seems I have no complaints about the hardware price. Everything looks good. 120 FPS VRR, very happy with everything they've shown. Bigger Joy-Cons. Hopefully they won't give me like cramps and stuff. I don't get why they still ship that useless grip which comes with it and don't give you the charging grip. You have to buy that separately. It's so annoying. It's literally their equivalent of like how Sony charges like $20 for that stupid plastic stand for the PS5. Like just put that thing in the box, man. Don't be so cheap with it. So yeah, like and I say this because the Pro controller has the paddles, like the two back buttons. you don't get those on the grip which ships with the console. It's only in the charging grip. So like they're literally like cutting corners even there now. So yeah, like it's. But yeah, I think like at this rate, we'd probably be able to do like a Switch 2 podcast each week talking about the good and bad. So we should.
I'd be down for that. That sounds
Yes.
fun.
Yeah, the situation's always evolving at this rate.
I am so excited to just sit there and play those recent Falcom Switch ports just on Switch 2, just to see what happens. Just to see if I find any like kind of like hardware based upgrades.
I am gonna definitely try out Ease 9 for sure.
Oh my god! Maybe it'll make it playable.
That reminds me,
speaking
like
of-
the first game I'm gonna play on my Switch 2 is going to be Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, just to see
Oh, okay.
is it a locked 30 FPS?
You know,
Because-
for that one, it might be worth waiting for the patch because they've announced a free update coming to it, but they didn't specify what the update will add. So both Scarlet and Violet and like I think a few other games, they said some of them are going to get improved resolution or like just something like that. Some of them are going to get game share. Some of them are going to get other features, but they didn't specify when these updates are coming or what they're going to add. They just said it's possible the updates would add some of these features. So,
Could be
but
day
yeah, like
one.
out of the box, it'll be good to see if you can brute force that and Age of Calamity. Like maybe that'll be playable finally.
Every person
that
got Age of
reminds me, I
Calamity
need to
is probably
pick-
going
I
to
need
try
to-
it that night.
I need to pick up Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes because I've been wanting to play that, but it's like I'm not going to play that on Switch now that I'm going to have a Switch 2. It's like, oh, I'll finally play your video game.
Yeah, I wonder. Hopefully they're like out of the box, like at launch. You don't have to wait for a patch to like at least stable.
Oh yeah,
we'll
I'm
see.
sure that's gonna be like most games with like any kind of performance issues. Is just they might get a patch that unlocks the frame rate cap to like 60, but for any of those games that like targeted 30 and could never hit it, yeah, you're probably gonna be able to make them actually playable now.
But yeah, there's like a huge list of games which I've played on Switch 1, which I would want to revisit on Switch 2. Might write about that actually.
I
But
literally,
yeah, let's see.
We should make a
literally
list about
stopped.
that as
Yeah,
well.
we should. Yeah,
It's hard not to talk about it. Okay, we're closing the book on this until more
perform
developments. Yeah.
I'm excited to play Echoes of Wisdom. I dropped my playthrough a little less than halfway through because it's like I'm enjoying this, but this performance is terrible, bro.
Stay tuned until we have more new Switch 2 things to talk about because we can talk about forever on this.
Yeah,
So
we
stay,
need to
stay
do
tuned until next
Tetracast-
week.
Yeah.
The Tetracast Nintendo Switch 2 edition.
So yeah, I guess you mentioned eons ago, Brian, at the beginning of this podcast episode. One of the big releases this week is from a brand new developer of was it Sandfall or Kepler? I forgot which was the publisher and which was the developer.
Kepler is
the
the publisher. Sandfall is the developer.
Okay, yes, they finally released a really, really neat looking RPG when it was shown off by the Xbox presentation last year called Clair Obscur Expedition 33. And this has been universally raved and praised this week. I didn't know what to expect. I heard good things about it from, of course, Scott, who's been reviewing it, and Adam, who's also been playing it and has been working on guides for it. So I'm very interested to hear from Adam on more of this game. But just that you also Adam said like this game really impressed you. Tee us up about like what's Clair Obscur all about, and generally what did you think about your time with it?
It's hard to believe that a year ago this game didn't exist. I mean, it obviously existed, but it wasn't announced. Like we didn't know about it. And it basically was announced last summer and got a lot of buzz based on just what they showed of it. And then we did our most anticipated like voting like for our readers last year, and Xenoblade got first, but this got second, which is actually pretty darn good for a unknown for a game that's not part of a franchise from a new developer, right? Like we had nothing to go off of here other than what they showed us. So people were really excited for this. Scott reviewed the game. He gave it a 10. He wasn't able to make this podcast. I have also finished this game, and I think my blanket assessment, just up front here, is that it's really impressive for a debut title from a new developer. That's a pretty small team. Like it's like 30 people or so. This isn't AAA. It's Unreal Engine 5, so it's got really great production and presentation like values. But like
cutscenes are insanely good. Like,
yeah,
genuinely.
Yeah, so it's really impressive for a debut. In fact, so I want to say something kind of obvious, but maybe some people don't always think about it this way. So Scott and I were playing this. We both really liked this game, but we had like no idea what anyone else thought. And we were talking about his review, and we both liked it. And we both kind of agree, and we'll get to these in a moment, that like, it's not a perfect game. I know that's obvious, but like, here are the shortcomings. Here are the things that could be better. Here's some room for improvement. And I was like, maybe we can score it like a 9, kind of leave some room for, a follow-up 5 years from now or something like that. Because there's, when talking about like the pros and the cons of the game, he's like, well, honestly, I've never played a debut game that blew me away as much as this one did in terms of just kind of like out of nowhere, first go at it. This good all around, both in gameplay and presentation and story stuff. And he wanted
incredible
to give it a 10.
Soundtrack.
He wanted to give it a 10. Yeah. And I was like, honestly, I support that, fair. And that's what he went with. And like when he told me and we decided we were going to score it a 10, and I know scores aren't everything, but still, like, we had no idea, like, if we give it a 10, is this going to like stick out? What did other people think? Is this going to be aligned with what, consensus in any way? Or is it going to be like an outlier? We had no idea. We're kind of in the dark here, right? And this is true for a lot of reviews, right?
I think except for like what is it? Was it 2 days or 1 day before the reviews hit when Oblivion dropped? And
there's
you
like
had
a
like
teasing.
a lot of
Yeah.
media.
Yeah.
A lot of media folk were like, if you don't want to play this, there's another game coming
Yeah.
out soon. Wink,
Yeah,
wink, cough, cough, and stuff
We
like
had
that.
a whole
generally,
conversation about that.
I generally like disagreed with that whole a movement, I guess, is a way as a term I can put it up for it. But I generally did not like that people did that. To be honest,
Yeah, I think we tend not to tease because it's kind of annoying and childish.
Yeah,
It's blasé.
So
it's putting yourself on a platform for no substantiatable reason. Like,
Yeah.
anyways.
I think like you usually, I think for people who aren't aware, usually what happens with some games is when you have an embargo, you agree to like publish your review and not like sometimes not spoil stuff and all on a specific day and a specific time. But sometimes they also tell you that you can reveal you're reviewing a game to your audience by like a few days prior or maybe a week prior. And what happens then is you usually see like a lot of sites will just post that we can confirm we're reviewing XYZ and you can stay tuned for a review on this day or whatever. Like that's been pretty common, I think, with like Sony games and
yeah,
some
those
other
are pretty.
publishers
I
as
think
well.
those are pretty dumb too. Honestly,
I honestly hate that.
we
Yeah, so-
generally are the more like, I guess, old school style of like, we don't really like the tease. We'll do the job when the top, like when people are ready to like share it, whether it's on embargo list or they need a little bit more time. That's totally okay. But we're generally like, we generally discourage people like, hey, don't be teasing or dickish about it. Just just do the job and don't like put yourself out there and like tease like that, because I think about it from like the user end perspective, like, oh, like you're basically saying I'm playing this game early and you're not, haha, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give that message to people. It's like, that's not who we are. I don't think this is what RPG site should stand for. It's kind of like more of an ideology type of thing.
yes. Okay, where do we start with this game? So it's a turn-based game, and when James and I interviewed the executive producer Francois Maurice at GDC, they talked about some of the influences they had for this game, and to Mikhail's point, like, this game is very clearly inspired by a multitude of games, and they're not shy about that. Like, for example, one of the things we learned is that they wanted to make a turn-based game, but the creative director really enjoyed Sekiro, and he liked the feeling of parries. So one of the things that they wanted to incorporate in this game was this parry system, this kind of dodging, parrying, reactive gameplay to the turn-based combat. Now, having actions during a turn-based, menu-based system isn't like a brand new idea. I've seen some discussion like, is this just a retread or a new idea or novel, or is it not novel or whatever? I do think the extent and the weight that they have put on this system in this game is something that hasn't been done quite in this way before. And it may not be to everyone's cup of tea. I know not everyone is a fan of parry systems, but that's, in terms of like the pure combat elements of this game, that's one of the kind of defining features. It's the type of game where as you're playing through it, it's got a lot of the hallmarks of turn-based games in terms of like weapons and stats and abilities and equipment, and each character has like a unique skill set. And like when you get to a challenging battle, of course there are ways to tackle it like you would in a lot of menu-based games, where it's like you're trying to counter their strategy with your strategy of, stats and equipment and effects and whatnot. But there's also this component to this game that's kind of neat, where you fight an enemy that's like, this game has a lot of like optional challenges that you can encounter that maybe you shouldn't necessarily take on as soon as like they're available. Like maybe you should just come back when you're stronger, kind of deal. But it's the type of game where like if you parry good enough, you can beat them no matter what your stats are. You can. And that's kind of cool that there's this kind of this skill-based component to this game that's more reminiscent of, it's just timing really, but it's this kind of flavor to turn-based battles that I think feels at least a little bit new. Now, I don't want to say this is like a reinvention of turn-based battles or a new paradigm or a new standard. I just think it's an interesting take on this, concept that hasn't quite been done in this way before. Obviously, they have pointed to like the Paper Mario games that have like timing to them, but this takes it to like a little bit of a different focus.
It makes that whole paradigm, like you're saying, like it's almost like an extension of like what the Super Mario RPG and the Mario and Luigi games, like it's like expanding that concept of like, yes, there's been like dodges and parries like in those titles before, along with several other titles, but there's like a certain like you can build towards that, so to speak. So like there's mechanics in the game that like if you become skilled at the more action aspect of that combat system, you can build towards that and reward yourself like that. So it's kind of like blending like the like real time action RPG elements into a turn based system format, and I think that's really really interesting because it's trying to like meld these two that traditionally diametrically opposed genres together, like different philosophies, into like something that like kind of is an interesting hybrid of sorts. It reminds me of like how when Falcom and Atlus tried to like do their own hybrid systems of like a real action element into a turn-based. This one is sort of like almost the opposite of having action elements within the turn-based format, so to speak.
I want to ask Adam something specifically because when he mentioned in our staff chat that the game is extremely impressive, I want to know, were there like any specific moment in the opening hours which like made the game click with you? Because there was one for me, but I'm curious if you had one of those.
Well, I mean, as soon as you start playing the game, it looks really nice. It has a really kind of this sort of, it's very French. There's been a lot of jokes about how French the game is, but like just the kind of the art design. It's obviously like a photorealistic type art style, but like the architecture design, clothing design, things like that it's a great game to look at, and a lot of the music, even really early on, is really phenomenal. And so like those, before you even really get too much in terms of gameplay, just like presentation almost from the very get-go is like, wow, this is impressive, this is really good. And again, you have to remember it's basically being made by a team of less than 50 people. When it started to click in terms of like getting its hooks into me in terms of like its combat design, I'm trying to think, maybe around the time I got to the 4th character, which you get in the Gestural Village, like by that point, you have 4 different characters with like each a different like mechanic. At that point, you have a good collection of these pictos, which pictos are basically your equipment. And not only do they affect your stats, but they each have like a bit of a different like property to them. Like, for example, a picto that can cause your shots to do burning damage, or you have higher critical rate when an enemy is burning, or there are pictos that, like, if you're the last one standing, you get a boost to your abilities. And as you play through the game, there's literally like almost 200 of these pictos, and there's kind of some crazy stuff you can do in terms of like once you get to that point. I know I'm getting ahead of myself here in terms of like theory crafting, like how these can kind of work with each other, and how these effects can kind of stack and combine, and you can do ridiculous things with them. So I don't think it was an individual moment that really like proved to me, yeah, this game is something special. I think it's just around the time I got the 4th character, I started to kind of see that flexibility in the combat design about what you could do. And like, yeah, I've always been appreciative of like, having that sort of agency and kind of approaching combat how you want. And I think that's when I really started to appreciate that.
It's a lot of if-then statements, like mechanically under the hood, and that's kind of what you're really tooling around with, and that I agree with you that like, that's really captivating and compelling. It really brings out the inner theory crafter in you, because like even outside of like Pictos and the Lumina properties that like can be equipped on everyone once that you unlock those, a lot of like those things interface well with the unique skill trees that everyone has, because some people might like benefit off of like
Yeah.
you'll gain additional properties if you land critical hits, for example, or you'll gain additional properties if like you have more resources for that character exclusive mechanic feeding into that skill. So there's a lot of things to like really enhance the properties. So you're thinking about like your battle resource economy a lot of like, can I make the most out of like this engine that I'm creating
I want to
in battle?
I want to shout out like in particular how every single character in this game has like a very, very unique like gimmick to them, but it doesn't like get in the way of the combat. Instead, it just feels like it's hard to describe, but it's like every character kind of has like almost like a rotation to how you want to play them, but it's not rigid. You can like play around it, and it like depends on how you want to like manage things like with the rest of your play, like your party. It's like the stance system with Mael, or the different stains, and how you literally are basically deciding which of like Lune's skills you want to do first in order to take advantage of like using those stains to power up specific skills, or like CL and her whole system with like the sun and moon system, and the marking enemies with cards to power up abilities by like it's just so fascinating how like every character feels so unique in how they play, and it just that's the thing that just stands out to me. Not just the fact that the game's art style is incredible, not just the fact that this game's soundtrack. I do not think this game's soundtrack is going to be beat in terms of like
Before I know before because I know Brian said raise hand, but before we get to Brian, I want you to talk about, because I saw your post on social media, how this game's composer was found.
yeah. So I got to like the second major boss, the Go Blue, and I fought it, and I was like, man, this soundtrack just keeps pumping out like bangers. So I looked up, it's like, who did the soundtrack on this? What have they worked on before? And I was like, I'm not seeing anything. Here's their website. The only thing they have up for their portfolio are songs from Expedition 33. So I went to the Expedition 33 site, and there was like a whole like little kind of article.
Oh no, you cut out, James.
Yeah, so this guy, the person that worked on the soundtrack for Expedition 33, Lordian, I think it's Dastard. Yeah, Lordian Dastard. He didn't make like his first video game soundtrack was this game. Beforehand, he was a guitar teacher, and in his spare time, he was making like SoundCloud, like making stuff for SoundCloud. And the director of the game found like him posting about his SoundCloud on a random like indie video game development forum and was like, I want you to make the soundtrack for our game. Literally just found one of his SoundCloud posts and offered him a job on the spot.
Then that's incredible. An incredible story. That's the power of kind of putting yourself out there as an artist, because you just never know. That's it's incredible that they were able to work that out.
And I do think I speak for everyone that's been playing this game, where it's like this soundtrack is like not just the quality, but just the range of it is insane. Like,
yeah,
genuinely,
we heard some of it pre-release. Like they've been releasing a few clips here and there since it was announced and stuff. But yeah, like I'm just gonna mention briefly that when they revealed the trailer and they showed off the game, and I saw it looks really nice and all, I honestly expected this to be a 10-hour long game, because I was like, there's no way they can deliver on those visuals for like more than 10 hours. Small team, budget price. I just thought, okay, it's gonna be like a 10-hour long game, and that's it, like with whatever. And then like the game has like 154 songs on the soundtrack. I'm not even close to finishing it at like 20 hours and stuff. I'm adoring every area and going through Adam's guides, which he's put up for like the collectibles, because I missed some stuff before. And yeah, I asked him specifically about which part where the game clicked, because James brought up that Goblu boss fight. This was the second part for me. The first part was when I got to the world map and I was like, oh, it's one of those. I'm so happy there's a world map over here. Like, and it feels this good and stuff like that. But when I did this fight and the song played, I was like, yep, this is absolute cinema. I'm good. I'm home.
Brian, you wanted to say something earlier.
So I was just gonna say, like,
Yeah.
when I was thinking about the answer to, like, I've played maybe 8 hours of this game since it released. Just bought it myself, and started playing it. And it's like, how long should I play through until I know if this game is for me or not? And I struggle to think of a specific moment. I saw some people saying like the prologue is very prologue-ish. It has a very emotional scene which resonated very strongly with some people. But to me, it just seems like it's a sort of game that just keeps building on itself. Like the first areas are pretty linear, but then the next areas, start to open up, and you actually get lost a little bit. At least I did, but in a good way. And I'm like, oh, it's not. This isn't like a railroad, or I have a string tied around my waist and I'm being pulled forward from cutscene to cutscene. Like, no, it's got a lot of latitude to it. Like, I can go back this way. I'm at the world map, like Mikhail said, and it's not like there's only one place to go. There's 4 places to go, and some of them are marked in red and they're difficult. Some of them are shorter little cities. Some of them are dungeons. And then like you get the pictos, and you're like, oh, I can start to build my characters either this way or this way. And I know James talked about the different gimmicks, and I'm using that not disparagingly for each character, but also like interplay between the characters. Like, oh, if I have this character with high agility marking the enemy, which is a debuff, and then I have this character going second that has this specific ability or this specific picto that can benefit from that, and then this character going third on top of all the other things, like you start to kind of formulate these things in your head on top of the story, which I'll go back to Adam to talk about characters and story, because we're kind of leaving that like for the back half. And it's just a sort of the game that just keeps building and building. And to me, I can't really point to any one moment. It just keeps growing upon itself. And I think that's the mark of a really good game. It's not like there's this big like, oh shit went down here, or there's a big story revelation here, or it finally got good when I got to Pulse, sort of thing. It's just a sort of game that just keeps impressing me anyways. In every 20 minutes or something, and sometimes it's a story thing, sometimes it's a gameplay thing, sometimes it's like oh yeah, I just parried all that boss 18 times in a row to defeat something I probably shouldn't have defeated this early, but I was skilled enough to do it, or I was practiced enough to do it, or I set up my engine, so to speak, well enough to be able to do it. That was kind of just my answer to when did the game get good, or like when did the game like really click. I can't point to a moment, but for a good reason. That's kind of my take.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, despite how like beautiful the graphic is, I still can't get over how jarring when the character moves. Like, just like I don't know, just like the way that they move just feels a little bit jarring to me.
The animation is like it's definitely it's definitely not a AAA studio type of like production value towards like all the animation. Like, it's definitely for the first time when I moved Gustav in the prologue, the first time you get control of a character, like I was running around and jumping. I'm like, this kind of looks a little bit off, but I understand the context of like it's the game development. Like I'm willing to like not be too harsh on it, but it's definitely like very kind of stiff and janky looking at times. And there's definitely like some technical bugs and aspects under the hood, whether it's like, the anti-aliasing solution isn't the best. Some of the compressed cutscenes, the quality wise, not the best technical wise. There are some parts of the world map where my characters were actually stuck like at certain like sections of the map, and they'd continue like running and they couldn't move out, like get out of unstuck at all. So like it's a good thing that this game auto saves often, like to the point that like it leaves like two like backup saves. So like I had to like go to those in there, because that would have normally been like a game progress breaking bug if I was just like stuck on that one spot and like I saved there with all my saves, and then I wouldn't be able to like progress at all on it. So thankfully they already automatically do that, just backup saves for you, because that would have been really bad if I was just like stuck there and had to like restart the game like 8 hours in. But it's like, it's there are things about it that are like kind of rough around the edges. There'll be like, this won't be a game for everyone. I want to stress that, like, if you're not a fan of like timing based things, like in turn based battle systems, this game, it's fine. It's fine. Like this game might not be for you, because like this game expects you to parry, dodge, jump often, depending on like what the enemies are doing to you. It expects you to react and to really get access to the rest of your toolkit. Like you have to dodge and parry like often for them to get enough action points to kind of start your battle economy even faster. And for some people that won't be that for them. Like I have some friends that like they really want to like this game, but they really don't like the real time action aspects of the turn based combat system. They don't like having to react to every single battle animation for the enemy, and that's I get it, and I just want to be upfront and be like, hey, if that's not for you, this might not be your kind of game either. And before, I don't know about how you want to do this, Adam, because I know this is a pretty story sensitive game. I know the nature of the story. There's definitely some points where like it changes drastically as you continue playing. But I do want to mention that like the things that really stick out about for this game is the story setup is interesting, but the way that they present the story and the cinematography and the composition of the cutscene shots is like really, really striking. The way that like story cutscenes and the body language that people exhibit to each other and the facial expressions and their voice performance, all that together is like, it really does make you feel like you're watching a movie every time a cutscene plays in this game, because it's so, as you said, it's photorealistic, and they really do a great job mocapping like everything on the character models to make it feel like it matters. Like you can really feel, that what they're going through is tough, and it's like it's really heavy.
There's a scene relatively early in the game when you get to Esquia's nest where Gustav shouts the password, and I was actually just watching Brian play through this section. And then, if you've seen that scene, it's kind of a silly scene.
Such a good bit. It's such a good bit.
But like Gustav's like voice performance, Charlie Cox, and the voice performances are outstanding in this game, especially later on. But like even just like in the animations, like he's obviously like he kind of feels awkward having to do this password, and then he's like really apologetic afterwards, and just like not only in the performance but like in the animations in terms of like what he's doing with his hands and like the way he's kind of like stuttering through it's a good performance, and that's just a silly section there.
I think I'm right about to get to that. I'm looking forward to it.
There's one specific cutscene that I don't want to say anything specific about it, but the one at the camp after the Gestral village, that really got me. That was like a really, really, like, it was not something I expected.
Throwing rocks?
Oh yeah.
But there's actually a handful of those so in the game, and so I've beaten the game. I'm obviously not going to spoil anything, but in the game there's these handful of these camp cutscenes that are optional, and those are honestly some of the best cutscenes in the game, because some of them are not like, I mean, actually most of those are not like plot stuff. There's actually one cutscene later that's between Lune and Ciel that's kind of about nothing. Like they don't talk about anything like having to do with much of the plot or whatever, and it's not even like, let me tell you my backstory or whatever, right? it's just kind of like these two characters just in this situation, just kind of like in each other's company, just like being characters, right? And there's a handful of those sorts of scenes that I appreciate. I always it kind of rubs me the wrong way when I feel like every line of dialogue is like characters just trying to remind each other, like, here's the objective, here's the plot, here's how we move to the next part of the story. But there are these camp scenes that are not that, and I appreciate that. Before we get too far into the story, though, one more game thing I wanted to touch on. Actually, probably a handful of things, but probably the number one criticism I've seen from people playing these games is there should be a mini-map in the dungeons. And I think anyone who saw like the preview builds that a lot of media played, including Scott for us, a month ago, I knew this was coming. So how the game works in terms of its design, if you haven't played it, it's kind of like these individual little levels that you go into. They're dotted on a world map, but you enter it, and it's kind of like a level, and it has no map. There is no map at all. No full map, no mini map, nothing. And this is clearly a design decision. This isn't just something like, whoops, we forgot, or we didn't consider one. It's like they wanted it this way, and I think to me it kind of feels sort of similar to something like Nioh. If you played Nioh, this game does have a few Souls-like influence, right? And Nioh is kind of like these little levels that you go through that they're not quite linear, they're not quite open zone, but there is no map, and you kind of have to figure out your way around these levels by landmarks, different paths. Some of these paths are easy to find, some of them not so easy. There's shortcuts that you find, and yes, it's actually relatively easy to get turned around, especially in some of the later zones. And I fully understand people saying there should be a map. Or even people more extreme, and this is a fair opinion, like, this exploration sucks. Which, yeah, I get it, but I also sort of just accept and understand that this is what they wanted in terms of the design. They wanted people to kind of like explore these zones, maybe get lost a little bit, kind of pay attention to the surroundings and the environment. And I understand the desire for a map. I would not even be against having a mini map. But at that point, and I know I've played games like this, where if there is a mini map, you almost spend more time just looking at your map and your little arrow and like, all right, time to hover around this little blobish, abstraction.
I would definitely just look at that mini map like, all right, I need to go here, and not really think about the environment.
Yeah, and you can't. It kind of feels a little bit more like checklisty, where it's just like I went through all the paths and went down all the rooms on the map. So, like, I guess my takeaway is like, I don't mind not having a mini map, and I don't mind getting lost a little bit sometimes, but I fully understand that people will there will be some contention with this. But they made a conscious decision, this is how it's going to be. And
this is definitely a game where it rubs the RPG player in me, like it rubs some brain cells of like, okay, this feels like the right way, so I'm gonna go back and go the other because that's an optional way, and it sure is, like 9 times out of 10. But it's usually a fun like optional way. Like some of them are like platforming challenges, or just a mini thing, or like or you have to go ascend something to go get a little goodie and then go back down, and like it's just like the map layout like isn't complex in itself, but it's like, as you said, it's easy to like feel like you're lost because, as like for me, like I'm thinking about like exploring all the optional different side branches, and I have to worry about like I don't want to progress too much because I don't want to miss out on anything. You're not gonna always just back to go back to the way I came. I think that's the kind of like weird thing about the fast travel system in the checkpoints, because there are checkpoints in the game where you can rest up, you can upgrade your attributes, learn new skills, and do like kind of like it's a rest point pretty much. But there's like a fast travel to them, and then when you choose fast travel, it'll just give you like a list of like names of like previous locations you've been to, but it kind of wish there was like at least a snapshot of like what that surrounding place looked like, so I know if I were like fast travel to a previous point, like where it would look like, because like at this point in time, I just got a list of names. Like I don't know what any of these places I've been through. Like I don't know what part of the stage this is, And it's just like it's not a big deal. I haven't had like the need to like really use it that much, but it's just one of those things that like I'm sure over time they might like patch in like some of that handy stuff here and there. I think like one of the weirdest things, like when you were talking about like these games having maps versus no maps, is I remember having this criticism of Black Myth Wukong last year, where like a lot of their stages, especially later on stages, become really expansive and really extended, longer than Expedition 33 so far. So like that's a game where like I wish there was like a mini map, because like these stages are like pretty long. They get pretty long and are very expansive and like where you're going. And sometimes you're going there are two different routes you can go through to get to the same place. So it can be easy to feel like you're both ways are making progress, so you feel like you're missing out on something. And in that game, there is, because it's very secret content heavy in that game. So that's why I wish there was like a mini map in there. And then like other games that are Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, where like those stages are very linear. It's kind of hard to like, miss the side content and the critical path. Yet they decided to add a map to that post-launch, like several months later. Which is like a really weird decision, but like I'm like, that's cool though. But it's interesting to see like the design, like mentality of like launch versus post-launch, of like which developers decide to like eventually add maps at a later time to their games.
And I should mention that some of the later zones do get a little bit less linear. I mean, I think you even see that early on. Like the first zone, Spring Meadows, is pretty linear with just a few side paths. Even Flying Waters, couple of detours. But again, I mean, all these levels have like a start and an end, and you have to make your way from one side to the other, right? So there is going to be some path, right, that you have to get through to get from point A to point B. But then, like, once you get to, like, the Ancient Sanctuary and then, like, an optional area like Yellow Harvest, it does get a little bit more, like, I don't want to say open zone, because they're not, but a little bit more like, okay, here's, like, a region of this map that has a couple of different rooms off to the side and maybe a couple of different, a little bit less A to B. And even later, there's even more of that. So I don't think it ever got, like, to the point where I was, like, completely lost. But and there are definitely points where I would say like the level design is not perfect, right? I think there could be a little bit better landmarking or whatever, but that is definitely something that is a design decision that is worth examining, praising, criticizing, what have you. It's there, and that they decided it that way. So, but in terms of in terms of story, it is a type of story that early on, there's obviously a lot of mysteries in terms of like, who is the paintress? If you haven't heard the premise, but the premise basically is there's a mysterious being known as the paintress who every year counts down on a monolith, a number. And this has been going on, it started at 100 and now it's at 33. So this has been going on for 67 years. And basically, whatever that number reaches, every year it goes down by one. Anyone of that age will perish they turn into petals in a kind of a magical erasure called the Gamage. And we have no idea. You have no idea, like, why does this happen? What started it? Like, why, what's going on here? And so these expeditions have been made to basically defeat the paintress. As you can kind of imagine, this is sort of like a doomsday clock. Eventually it's going to reach numbers where life doesn't exist anymore. So that's basically the thrust of the game, is you're going on these expeditions to stop this Gamage and, figure out what's going on. And I've seen a couple of op-eds pop up about this, and I agree with them. This game, I think, does a pretty good job with exposition. It clues you in on parts of the world that you need to know, but not so rigidly where it feels like a character is like reading off of a Wikipedia page. I think Josh Broadwell, who reviewed this on Roger Ebert, kind of said he expected, after the first scene of the game, like Gustav to start monologuing to himself, like, "Hi, I'm Gustav. Every year the paintress does this, and this is what happens, and this is an expedition, and here's what we do." But they don't really do that. You kind of just figure it out in context. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
There is some exposition, don't get me wrong, And like, I don't think all exposition is bad, but I think it does a good balancing of not just having a character just explain it to you. Like I said, reading off a Wikipedia page of like this world.
The prologue does a really good job of that. Where it's like it's fed to you organically. You're speaking with other characters, but they're not reminding each other of what's going on. You kind of, they say enough and phrase it in a way where it feels like real people are speaking to each other, rather than them be like, oh, let's remind each other. Did you forget that like the expedition stands for this? It's
Yeah.
not like that, you know. But a lot of RPGs have done, not to say that they're bad games, but we've seen it done before, and we kind of wish that like in some of these cases they were more organically delivered, and this game does do its best
I think
to make it sound natural.
I think the last thing I'll say about story is that, especially as you get into the second and later parts of the game, there is a theme that emerges that, how do I put this? The game is about something, and it becomes more and more clear what it's about. And I have seen some both praise and criticism about how it handles like its storytelling. And, it's fair, but I do appreciate that the game, there is a theme to it that kind of like evolves over time. And so this isn't just like, wouldn't this be cool or whatever, like a power fantasy? Like there actually is I don't want to just say a message because that sounds almost too shallow, but like there is a theme like behind all of this. And it was kind of cool to see that going in blind. So I don't want to say much more than that. Like seeing that emerge from the game. It's a little bit, I have criticisms of it. It's messy in places, and the game is just messy in places. But and to me, it's kind of like an interesting kind of messy. I'd rather it be, ambitious and creative and a little bit messy versus like sterile and safe and kind of boring. So like, no, don't get me wrong. There are definitely things to criticize all over the place, but going back to how we started this conversation, I 100% support Scott giving this a 10, because I do think, given the context of like this game's development, who made it with the resources they had, and personally, I kind of tend to feel a little bit of franchise fatigue from time to time. So having like this thing that is just like ambitious and new, but clearly heavily inspired from people who clearly love the genre,
It's a feel good.
Yeah, like, and I think it's a good mix of like creativity and inspiration. And I've actually have seen a lot of people talk about what vibes they get from this game. So I'm curious what you guys think who have been playing it. So some of the things that we know are inspirations because they told us, and it's kind of obvious as you play it. Sekiro for some of the mechanics, Final Fantasy X, and I see why.
Shadow Hearts.
Some Shadow Hearts. I've seen a lot of people say this feels a little bit like a Mistwalker game, like Lost Odyssey.
Yeah.
And I feel that
I've seen
too.
people complain it to Lost Odyssey. I've seen people compare it to Fantasia, and I completely agree. It definitely gives similar vibes to when I play Lost Odyssey or Fantasia, and that is like high praise for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have an original answer to that. That's pretty much what I get a little bit out of all of those too. So
Are you not sold on the game yet, Josh? Just
Josh is
asking,
playing
when
it.
does it get good?
I've been playing it. I'm like 10 hours in. I've been enjoying it. I'm enjoying a lot of it. I admit that like Adam was saying, it's not a perfect game, but it's so impressive that like just knowing the context of its development, and I've been enjoying myself a lot. Despite like there are some problems, like like you can get really into the weeds of like, well, a lot of the battle system defensively is like you have to accept that like you have to react to enemy animations, so you'll be seeing a lot of like canned animations and repeating a lot of the same steps on the defense side for that. And that's it's totally fine.
I do want to say one thing about the combat that I don't think we really touched on. I thought that the aiming at specific parts of an enemy mechanic was just going to be find the weak point. You found the weak point, you did a bunch of damage, and that would be it. But then, like in the lead up to the Gestural Village, they actually made use of it where it's like, hey, a part of their body that's like tied to it, and just like shoot the hell out of it to break it. And it's like Now I don't have to dodge lightning cannonballs again. Thanks, game.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pictos that like interface with if you shoot a shot and then attack, you'll get an extra bonus. Or for Lune, that's how I've been liking having her build up stains. Is one of her weapons is like if you use the gunshot mechanic, you can get a stain for each one you fire. And I don't know if that's the most efficient way. Like maybe there's a build that's completely like that outclasses it, but it's not an afterthought. It's a fully realized system that you can
Builds are
integrate
very
or not
flexible
depending on
this
your
game.
style. Yeah.
Like there's not really a right answer, right? Like everyone will have different ways of like how they want to build their characters. Like my Lune, for example, is totally different from that. She's a fire lightning goddess on mine, where I make use of the trait on her lightning ability that like when she crits, it hits twice. So I've been pumping the shit out of luck for her and just doing giga damage with that because that's how I decided to build. But that's not going to be the correct way for some people, and they want to build another way, and that's totally cool because this game gives you that flexibility. It gives it in your hands. Say we're going to give you these characters with these mechanics and like a whole bunch of options. Go wild at how you want to experiment. As long as it gets into the game and makes it fun, that's not a wrong answer.
Now, in terms of when they gave us review code for this game, and I think they might have said this in like a previews too, they basically said the game itself to finish it is about 30 hours, which honestly we need more reasonably length RPGs and not just 100-hour behemoths. But if you want to like do everything, it's more like 60 to 70. Because especially in the back half of this game, is that there's a lot of like optional stuff. And it's the type of game where if you're like an RPG gearhead like I am, or like a lot of us are, you enter like an optional dungeon. And, if you're being cynical about it, it's just like, yeah, you're just doing more fights and stuff, right? But you do these optional dungeons and you might find like another picto that might layer well with the pictos you already have, or a new weapon or whatever. And so you like explore these optional zones. You might find an optional challenging boss that might just be fun to challenge yourself and see if you can beat this guy. And you might find some cool pictos or equipment that like layer well with your strategies that you've been using, and maybe they can evolve. So it feels rewarding to like do some of that content, both in terms of like mechanics, in terms of this party building, theory crafting stuff, but also just like these fun, challenging battles, and what you can do with there. So it kind of, I would have been a little bit more disappointed if the game was a little bit more like streamlined, just like go to point A to B to C to D to E to F, and then now you're at the end. I kind of appreciate that there's this little bit of decision you have to do in terms of where you want to go and what you want to tackle, especially later on.
I'm just gonna ask you, Adam, does this game have annoying things where if you forget to talk to this person, oh, you missed the best weapon, or stuff like that?
Most of the game is we were talking about level design earlier and like afraid to miss stuff, but you can always go back for the most part. There are a few small missables.
Like the arena. Like I know that Mael's like one of her best weapons you only get if you go through the arena and win the final fight as her. Otherwise, a different character gets the weapon.
You can get that later.
Get that weapon. Yeah.
You can? Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
You have to beat Golgra to get it, which you cannot do. Good luck beating her early on. If you parry well enough, you might be able to, but probably just come back later.
Look,
yeah,
my achievement in that game is beating the hidden gestural arena fully before stepping foot into the village. Okay, and I feel like a god gamer after beating that final.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant by like these challenging fights. Is obviously like any turn-based RPG, there's like a strategy kind of build your party type mechanic to it, but also like if you can just time it well enough and long enough and consistent enough, you can kind of punch above your weight. So.
I do want to move on to the next game because I want Cullen to be here to discuss it. But first, big congrats to the studio on already selling 500,000 copies of Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Tremendous achievement from a brand new studio's debut game off the bat. Just on its way to selling 1 mil probably after the weekend, if not very close. Seems like a lot of people got really interested based on early impressions from the reviews that came out, and everyone talking about it. Very awesome. Mikhail, just briefly tell us about its performance on the deck and ROG Ally.
So the only reason I want to bring this up on the podcast specifically is because this game does something or did something interesting. So when we got review code for it, it was a little rough, and as usual because it's an Unreal Engine 5 game, so it's demanding and stuff. But what happened is, I believe it was either a few hours before review embargo, or it was like after that, like basically before launch, it got a big update. And what happened with that update is it just locked the graphic settings on Steam Deck to what I guess the developers had decided was enough, and those were good for like 45 FPS on the Steam Deck OLED, or 30 FPS on the normal one, more or less. But they dramatically like cut back the visuals to the point where, like, if you look at them side by side, it looks like you're like an Xbox Series X and Series S game together, like that much of a difference. So the reason I bring this up is because there's a way to like work around this, and I mentioned it in the article I did, and you can get the game looking relatively good. But yeah, this is an interesting game because it actually changed from Steam Deck unsupported to like Steam Deck playable now after that update happened on the like pre-day one patch, I should say. So it is a bit rough on both handhelds because it's a very demanding game, but with a bit of tweaking and like some of the settings I mentioned, you can get it to a playable experience. And yeah, because it's turn-based, although you will need to be good with the parrying and dodging because you're going to have to do that at like a lower frame rate at 30 FPS. And for the ROG Ally, it has some stuttering. I don't know how that is on like Windows because all of y'all are playing it on like more powerful PC. So I don't know how that's been for y'all. But on the ROG Ally, it honestly, you can get it to look better than the Steam Deck. But this random hitching and stuttering annoyed me to the point where I just stuck to the deck. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say on that.
Would you recommend, like, if people only had like their only option was to play on deck or ROG Ally, would this be
Yeah, I would like.
okay?
I would say that I would absolutely say yes. If you only have one of those devices, you know what to expect with very demanding. Like, even though this isn't a AAA game, the production values and the like system requirements are basically AAA game level. So you need to have that. You need to know what to expect when you go in. And I would absolutely say, uh, you should get it on. If you only have a Steam Deck and nothing else, this is worth playing over there with. Buy it on Steam and make sure you try it out so you can refund it if you're not happy with it, and use my settings which I mentioned in the guide, because for some reason no one else has spoken about some of the upscaling options which are used. They just looked at like one or two of them and went ahead. So yeah, like just buy it on Steam if you're not sure so you can refund it. But yeah, I'm happy with it on Steam Deck. That's
Okay.
even though I bought it on PS5, I'm going to stick with the Steam Deck version to like finish it off. So yeah.
Another funny thing about the pre-release update, most of you people will not know this, but if you are annoyed at like some of the bloom lighting in this game as you play, it used to be a lot worse. They toned it down
really?
in pre-release. Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
So yeah, that was actually one of Scott's criticisms, was like sometimes the lighting is too bright or too dark, and then it was literally, Mikhail pointed it out in our chat, like one of the updates, like wow, this is very obviously different now. So who knows if they tweak that again? But it was kind of an amusing thing to see that be like a criticism in Scott's review, and then immediately like, oh, they adjusted that. Okay.
Oh, okay.
They must have heard.
Interesting. Wow. Is there any final thing you want to mention on Expedition 33 before we move on?
I guess one thing that's kind of interesting to me is that, like, how do I put this? It's not very often that we're a RPG genre site, and a lot of us are friends with people who write for other RPG genre sites like RP Gamer and RPG Fan, and I actually check their reviews out for a lot of different things. I think I've shouted out like Zach Suikoden review, for instance, on RPG Fan. But like all three of those sites gave this game a perfect score. That's a lie. RPG Fan gave it a 99 out of 100, which is kind of funny. But my point in saying this is like the people who made this game are like role-playing game fans, especially like like, I think a lot of the writers for these sites are like PS1 era, Super Nintendo era, PS2 era, and like the people who made this game, the people on these sites really like this game. So like, if you're a RPG fan, honestly, you're probably already playing this game before you're listening to this podcast. But it just seems like there's a lot to like if you're
Either
in this
that or
space.
it's on their radar. They plan
Yeah.
to. But yeah, if you like our turn-based RPGs, definitely check this out. It's definitely just came out of nowhere. It feels like, even though we've known about it, but we just no one knew how good this was going to be, because this was a lot of unknown factors, right? It's honestly
It's
incredible.
extremely
and
impressive. Like,
Yeah.
keep going back to what Adam said. Extremely impressive.
Yeah. So
Like
That's
there's
cool.
been plenty of games that we've reviewed that are like not necessarily indie, but you know, like first projects or AA games or whatever. And while a lot of them aren't bad, they're just kind of like, oh, there's some good ideas buried in with a lot of, you know, bad execution or whatnot, or, you know, rough, very, very rough. So the fact that this game is just as impressive as it is for the scope that it has and the team that made it, yeah, it's like I said, that's why I agree with Scott supporting him, giving it a 10. I just think it's that impressive.
That's cool. Yeah. So yeah, definitely give Scott's a review. Read it if you're still unsure on what to expect from it, and then if you're looking to play it on a handheld device, check out Mikhail's article on it. Congratulations to the team at Sandfall for their work on it. Very, very awesome. We also have a game that like seems to everyone who has played it a significant amount have been raving about it. And Cullen wrote up about his like an unscored feature on the site at the moment because he's not fully completed it yet because it's a monster of the game of a game. I'm talking about the newest release from Tokyo Games, the 100-line Last Defense Academy. We saw some impressions about like the demo and pre-release coverage that's come out, but it seems like the full game is a monstrosity that's been unleashed on this world, and Cullen has yet to fully finish it, but has spoken about like this is a delightful nightmare that's been unleashed.
100-line Last Defense Academy is the scariest guy I've ever seen.
Tell us about it, Cullen. TS some of what it's about. This is the result of Uchikoshi and Kodaka duking it out with their pens in a video game. Tell me about it.
It's such a very interesting game to talk about because I think a lot of the appeal to this game is its story. Like this is a SRPG made by two guys most famous for their work with VN or adventure games. And so there is a big amount, like the ratio of like story to gameplay does favor story, but and so a lot of the appeal of this is working through the story. There are 100 endings in this game. And they said that their goals for this were that no ending could feel cheap. Like they wanted every ending to kind of have relevance. As of now, like as of writing my article, I was 55 hours in, having gotten 3 of the endings. As of now, I'm 69 hours in, and I've gotten 9 of the endings.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice, indeed. It's such a complicated game to talk about. Personally, I've been a Danganronpa fan and a Zero Escape fan since my teen years. I think, funny enough, the way I discovered RPG site was someone, I don't know who, was like live posting about like Zero Time Dilemma or something at like an anime expo.
Oh, that was me.
It was like,
that was me.
Yeah. That's how I discovered the site. And because I was like a super big Zero Escape fan back in the day.
Sorry. Quick interruption. I remember this moment because this was at MomoCon in Atlanta.
Okay.
Like back in like 2016 or 15 or something like that. And I remember there was like no live stream or anything, and like so I was the only one covering it on this Twitter account. And like it's obviously it was a relatively small expo, so that's just funny. That's how you found it.
Yeah, in my interview with Alex to join the site, I even mentioned that in particular of like, yeah, I found out about you guys because of Zero Time Dilemma. But yeah, so it's very interesting for them to take an approach on a completely different genre where it's like, a grid-based, turn-based SRPG. And what they put together is not only like a really fascinating story, it's like, again, massive as well, but the story is like itself interesting, the characters are fun, but it's also a really good SRPG. It's a bit hard to describe what makes it so good without like you seeing it, because in a lot of ways it is just a really polished like one of those. But what I particularly like is it so you have a turn order in every battle. Like it's a set amount of turns, but every time you defeat like one of the major enemies on the map, you gain an extra turn. So the game is constantly like asking you to play aggressively. And it's always really nice when an SRPG knows exactly what it wants to be. And it really just says like, hey, we designed this to play a very particular way. So just go for it. Like go all the way in. Like you have to use all your characters. So there's no like picking your party or whatever. It is, because of like that aggressive play style, and because you have to use everyone, there's more of a reason to actually spend your free time upgrading your characters, like everyone, instead of just picking like a couple that you really like. But it also just allows there to be really like fun strategies of like using, like having your damage dealers like solo a boss because everyone else has just been racking up extra turns for them. It's really cool stuff. But also, it's just, what's more interesting to me is just this process of getting these endings. I can't say too much about it, but basically you will reach a point of the game where it entirely opens up to you, and you are just like, it doesn't really tell you, like you're given a vague goal of like, basically like your guy's like, I want things to go well. And that's where the Uchikoshi stuff comes from, where for those of you who haven't played either Somnium Files or Zero Escape, there is a massive flowchart you can jump between like different events and choices. And so your whole goal is just roam the flowchart, like jump all around to all the different like paths, see and try to do as much as you can, and
Find
like
my
get
Yaoi
your
CG.
Yes, that as well. Go find your Yaoi CG,
Yeah,
your toxic Yaoi CG, which I got first ending. That was mine.
So to give like, for people who don't know like the story setup, just broadly speaking, like,
Oh, yeah.
I'll go to like the first 2 hours of this game. Like the first 2 hours is like you're playing this dude. I forgot the main dude's name already. I
Takumi, I honestly kind of forget his last name.
So Takumi is like this completely normal, average high school dude who lives like on this like Tokyo residential complex, but it's like kind of eerie because it's like kind of like a dome, almost like Gundam-esque space colony because of the sky up
Big
above.
space colony vibes.
Yeah, it's not really like this like a real sky or anything. So there are these occasional like emergencies and alerts that happens where people have to hide, find residents because there's like these weird creatures that come out for whatever inexplicable reason at that point in time at the intro. But you're basically living out a very normal day with this guy who's spending time with his childhood friend, and then things happen. And you're eventually put into a spot where like you guys don't get to an emergency shelter in time, and your childhood friend's life is in danger. So he has to go make a choice and save her. And this choice is basically, hey, he met this weird mascot dude shortly before, saying, hey, I have this like bloody dagger. You can please stab this into your chest to unlock your cool anime powers. And he's like, I don't want to, until he has to make this choice. It's like, if you want to save her, you have to unlock your anime powers. And he's like, okay, I guess. So that's how you get your battle tutorial. Right after the battle tutorial, you're kind of whisked away from this entire like Tokyo residential colony into like this academy. So you're separated from your childhood friend, and you're kind of isolated in this like locked off, almost military-esque academy with several other students who are in the exact same position you are, where they had to awaken their anime powers beforehand in their own circumstances, and you have to basically fend off these alien invaders trying to get into the school to go find a thingamajig inside the school. You don't know what it is yet, but that's kind of your entire goal up at the very front. Is like make sure that academy is safe because you're the last bastion of defense, while these aliens who are a threat to humanity are trying to get in, and you have to kind of push them back from it. And there's a whole point where, like, you survive 100 days and you can get back to your normal life, pretty much.
Yeah, and it's from there, like it is in a lot of ways trying to just be an extension or a successor to like the Danganronpa games, very much in like structure, art style. Like they got the composer Kodaka is back on like writer director for like the core root of the game, and it plays out kind of like how your Danganronpa games go, where you have like your story beats, you have your free time, and then on occasion the main gameplay gimmick plays out, which is just like in those it was the trials that were inspired by Ace Attorney, and in this one it's just SRPG battles. So you're deciding how your days play out.
But it's not a killing game like Danganronpa. You're not like antagonizing your fellow other people in there, because you're actually you're encouraged to cooperate with them together to fend it off. It's not like, oh, someone's like mysteriously murdered and you have to find out who the murderer is. It's like, no, you have to make peace somehow with these other eccentric personalities.
And one of the characters is explicitly not fond of the fact that she's not in a killing game.
Yeah, that one of them is very much a wink wink nod nod, like self-insert, self-aware Danganronpa fan.
Like a girl who got on the wrong bus and did not end up being dropped off at the Danganronpa game.
And this happens in the first 2 hours too. So this isn't like, first 2 hours spoilers, but very, very intro game. But since this is core to the gameplay that you're talking about, is at the like your first battle after the tutorial battle, you get introduced to like, hey, when people die in battle, that doesn't mean that's the end of their life necessarily. Like this self-insert Danganronpa girl does die, but you learn very, very shortly after that, like, hey, they can just like resurrect you as long as the drones get out in time and to
as long as you're on the campus the main story takes place in, there's like some kind of like technology in place that they can just bring you back, which also actually ties into the gameplay itself,
right?
Where it, like, unlike a lot of like SRPGs which tout some kind of like permadeath or anything,
like Fire Emblem, for example, you're trying to play defensively. You don't want any of your units to fall because you don't want to like permanently lose them.
Whereas
go for it.
In this one, it is more like saying like death isn't that big of a deal because of this mechanic. And like from a story perspective, they definitely play on this a little bit, and there's a lot of like fun things they do with like the rules established that are really neat. But like it's really cool because like it fits with the kind of SRPG they wanted to make, which is so very aggressive, and you wouldn't really be able to do that as much if you weren't able to like, if you had to also worry about characters just completely dying. But so there's a fun mechanic in this where if a character is near death, you don't really like, you have like some healing options, but it's really just like there's one character you get like about a third of the way into your first run who is the healer of the group, and everything else is you have to like craft items to heal. But if your character is near death, you can just decide to have them use like their special ability as like a desperation mode that will kill them immediately and make sure they're gone for the wave, but it'll also allow you to gain like a full meter. So like if things get really rough and you get like swarmed by a bunch of enemies, you can just decide like, I'm going to sacrifice this unit to basically rally everyone else and like allow us to like, turn the tide of battle in our favor.
Yeah, so basically, like death is like it's like a battle economy resource. It's not necessarily something that like you're trying to avoid. It's something that like you can lean on and actually take advantage of to gain the upper hand in battle. Because like you're mentioning, there's like this voltage super meter that people gain special mechanics with if it's like fully filled up, whether it's like a super move or like a buff that they can use at the expense of this special meter. It's like, so death is like, it's just not necessarily the end of someone, but like they can use it to like buff up everyone else, and like it's not permadeath. It's just like, okay, you're down, we're gonna get you back in the next battle, but for now I need you to go down so we can push through this thing. And I think that's the interesting thing about the RPG mechanics of this game. So it's like you said, it's encouraging you to play aggressively. Think about not only keeping yourselves healthy, but healthy enough so that like at the critical moment, you might need someone to just die on the spot, so everyone can push through a battle in that game, and that's really interesting. But as you said, like the battles and the gameplay itself is like a more of a secondary tool to deliver the narrative. Like the main thrust of this game, as you said, is the story, and we can't get into story spoilers obviously in this game, but there are definitely people like me that like when I play the demo, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way because I'm not a big Danganronpa person. I know of it, I know like the basics of it, but I wasn't really ever a big Danganronpa person. But I really like Zero Escape, and I was like, I don't know about this game because like a lot of the cast rubbed me the wrong way, and I know purposefully they're supposed to rub you the wrong way. A lot of them are annoying.
Oh yeah,
a lot of them are kind of creepy, but I am
cavalcade of freaks.
Based on everything that you've written, based on everything that James has told me, based on everything that like other people have written, all the praise, they're basically saying, look, I know you like 13 Sentinels, and I know you're like really highly near and a lot of like very like highly specialized narrative games like Nausea, and they're saying, knowing you and who you are, I promise you that you will like this game. I know it will take several hours for you to get to what I think is good, but I know that you will like this game. So, and I know that there's such a big project for Tokyo Games. It's very important that this game is successful because it's a very risky game, where like the scope of it and the amount of development time and resources they poured into it. I'm like, okay, I will support these developers, and I will have faith in what you and James and all the others have said that I will like this game. So I bought it like on release day. I will get around to it after Clair Obscur. I know it will take me many hours to probably fully beat it, but I am determined to play through this game and try to get all of the 100 endings before my life expires.
My goal is to try to get all 100 endings before I do a follow-up scored piece. At the very least, I want to get to like the true ending, wherever that is like hidden. But I do think it would be interesting to be able to report back on like what the game is pitching, which is 100 endings. Like there are a lot of people who are going in specifically to like just also do everything.
Yeah, I'm very interested, like because like they mentioned like in pre-release interviews, like they're as you said, there's no quote unquote cheap endings, and like whenever a game says, oh, we have so many endings, like 100 endings, even Nier Automata is like 26 endings, a good chunk of those 26 endings were just like joke endings or endings that came very suddenly and like without out of nowhere.
There was like five real endings in that.
Yeah, just kind of to puff out that number and be silly about it. So I'm really interested, what do they mean by like no cheap endings? What does that actually like? How does that manifest in the game? How are you able to achieve such a feat? And what is the context of each of these endings then? Like it feels in my brain, it's like it feels impossible. So that's what really has me interested about.
So I will say, some of them do seem like they're cheating a little bit, like
okay,
just a little. I definitely like.
They stuffed like 3 different like obvious like romances in one route, and it's like the different endings are obviously based off of which one you ultimately go for, and like split off of that for what I'm doing currently. So it's like I get it.
Okay.
So it's like a Star Ocean thing. It's like a pairing endings. It's like there's 100 endings or something in Star Ocean, but the number's inflated because of the different pairing.
And you can get multiple endings per run in Star Ocean.
Yes, this is different. This is like I will say there are a lot of completely unique story paths, and some of them do branch off into maybe like an early like ending, but like there's always like a special art for each.
Okay. I heard there's like over 100. Over 550 CG art pieces in this game.
It's a lot of like unique art. There's a bunch of like even though it's doing the Danganronpa style voice acting of people making grunts, there's still like a good amount of voice acting. They said that the script was like, I think 5 or 6 times the length of Danganronpa's. It is a massive game. And for what I've played so far, there hasn't been a lot of overlap between the routes. What is very cool though is if there's a battle that overlaps between the routes and you've already done it, you can just skip it.
Okay.
Which is great.
That's smart. Yeah, that's smart. You know.
It's also if you do skip it, you still get all the rewards. So the way experience works in this game, your characters don't explicitly level up. You get like BP, like an amount of BP at the end of every battle, and then you spend that on upgrading characters. So again, you can like if you're doing a battle that you already did another route, it's like, oh cool, that's like 7,000 free BP for doing nothing. This is great, sick.
So from where you are right now, I guess like for like it's hard to establish a firm foothold for people who are like maybe on the fence on this game, and based on like prior knowledge from Danganronpa and Zero Escape, like where like from what you've played so far, generally, would you recommend this game to people who like Danganronpa and or Zero Escape, and how would you
absolutely.
Would you say this is like kind of like the one of the strongest works that both of these creators have put out?
That's a bit hard to say for certain because I'm like basically 70 hours in at this point, and I ultimately do not know where like the story will like come together. Like, but I am trying to kind of avoid gunning for the true route.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense.
Like full disclosure, they like in our review guide, they sent over instructions on how to just beeline to the true route, and I don't want to do that. I think I would be robbing myself by not just like finding it naturally.
No, that makes sense to me.
I know vaguely where it is now. I know kind of what choice I need to make to kind of get on that general path to do it, but I want to just fill out the flowchart. And so I am like getting less of the story than a lot of people who would be if they want to just like mainline it. But
that's part of the experience, you know?
Yeah, that is honestly, that is the experience right there. It's this like flowchart style progression.
Yeah.
And it's why like the Eye of the Somnium File games, for example, I'm so glad that those like continue to exist, because for a while, like Zero Escape was kind of the only games doing that, of that like, hey, so, you know, you have all these different choices, all of them take you down completely different paths. Your job in this game is to navigate through this, make every possible choice like that you can, gather as much information on the overall scope and like all the mysteries, and then that's how you end up like reaching the true end eventually, by seeing and doing everything that you can. So I do think at the very least, this is a really wonderful blend of both of these writers' style, and it's working for me right now.
I'm really cool. Like, sorry, finish your thought.
No. Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I'm not finding anything that I'm like generally like really annoyed at. Like, there's no like it. I'm not like, I don't feel it's necessarily like weaker than a lot of their other works. It's just like I'm loving everything. I just want to see how it sticks the landing, which is another reason why I didn't even bother like scoring our initial piece, because I thought it would be unfair to like say that this was like a 9 or a 10 or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah.
When I don't even know like how I'll feel about where the story ends up going.
Yeah. I think what's really cool that people have mentioned, and you probably already encountered this as well, is like once you reach like the end of a route, I heard there's like individual credits for like each route that like, or like ending that like you've seen. Like there's multiple, like it actually lists out like the staff that worked on like, I guess, the route or the ending that you saw on it. I heard mention of it. I don't know how it manifests in that.
Yeah, so that is actually kind of neat. They are very open right away when you start playing, of all the different like, or I guess when you like it opens up, you get to see the writers for all of the like roots of the story. Like there's one that Kodaka wrote in particular that you just like, you end up playing and you go, yeah, that makes sense. There's I think they got the Persona 5 Tactica writer for one of the routes, and it's like one of the best ones in the game.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah,
that's surprising, because I thought Tactica had a very, very bad story.
I thought it had an okay story, but like it's Yeah, it was one of the better ones I've played so far. And what I think is really cool about this like the way they did this of like Uchikoshi oversaw all of the different routes, but the specific routes he handed off to different writers. So it really feels like we're getting a love letter to the visual novel genre of all these different styles, and the routes do feel distinct. Like for some of them, it feels like you are playing a different game.
Interesting.
Which is something I think is really cool. I'm a big VN guy. I haven't played like every VN ever, but like I've played a lot of the classics. I have a very fond appreciation for this genre. Has anyone here?
We need to get you on Utoada Dumono once you're done with 100 Line.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm actually not playing anymore.
He's actually not
novels.
a VN fan anymore.
I'm not a VN fan. I hate SRPGs. I'm sorry, bud.
I don't know. The more I hear about this game, I feel like it's G generation with the aggressive killing to get the best.
That's funny. The way that that's called describing it, it feels like almost like an anthology of visual novel culture.
Has anyone here played Kamai Taichi no Yoru? If I butchered that, I'm sorry.
I'm
also
very
known
familiar with it, but I haven't played it myself.
Also known as Banshee's Last Cry for that iOS port, which is the only.
I need to play that. That got a remake on that released last year, right?
It was like a 3-pack, like a remaster collection.
Yeah. God, they need to localize that.
Yeah, I agree.
But like one of the cool things about that is that game has like a start to finish a core route with like a bunch of different branches, and it's like a very self-serious like murder story, like mystery kind of like you're trapped in this snow lodge and like shit's going on and you got to figure this out. But once you figure out like get the true ending of that, a neat thing it does is it will then allow you to basically replay the game and then find a bunch of just joke endings that are full ass routes of completely different tones and story genres. And I'm kind of getting a similar vibe here with how stuff is just playing out. It's not like all like silly stuff in all the different like extra routes, but there's a lot of stuff where it's just like, hey, we have this big cast. And unlike a Danganronpa game, we're not whittling them down like slowly because, to fit the predetermined narrative here. Let's just put these characters in situations and just see what happens.
Yeah. Interesting. I know there's like an impossible question for you, so you let me know how you want to handle this question. But are there any characters that you become fond of in this game? Like any favorites that stick out?
Easy.
To you? Mm-hmm.
Eito is my goat. Just the perfect character. Hiroko is great. Darumi, the girl who just speaks in killing game references. The quirky girl is fantastic. There's a part where you can there's an optional bit of dialogue with her where you're just you just decide to talk to her during some free time, and she's like, "Hey Takumi, well if you really want to know, some of my favorite eroge is Saya no Uta," and I'm like, "Are you allowed to just say that?"
I know that game. I
Video game, are you allowed to just say that? I don't know if you're allowed to just say that out loud.
That is was Butcher Gen's most infamous work.
It is just like there's this energy this game has of like it. You can when Raincode came out. Mm-hmm. I don't know who here actually played that. Like, do we have any Raincode heads?
I technically played. Well, I played like half of it. I thought it was just okay.
Yeah, it's a kind of game I'd say is aggressively okay, which is crazy because it was literally Spike Chunsoft who published and had when Kodaka was working for them, they were they did Danganronpa with Kodaka there. So they get Kodaka back and they make a really safe and boring game that doesn't feel like a Danganronpa successor because it has no energy to it. And Raincode feels like a game where they wanted to do Danganronpa, we have Danganronpa at home, but we didn't get Kodaka back. But the guy came back, and this one is just hey, so this time we in my own company, I'm making a game that stylistically feels like a actual true Danganronpa successor, and it has just as much of the energy while still not feeling derivative.
Just
It's great. I'm still working through it. This game never ends.
If you tell me this game has 20% as good as Saya no Uta, I am buying it.
I think that's impossible to because there's two completely different games entirely.
But it has the same
yeah,
quality. I'm interested in checking it out.
yeah, I'm
It's
very interested, like, because I love visual novels, and I feel like this game is like a strange love letter to visual novels in a very comprehensive way.
Especially like we don't get a lot of VNs that have this amount of like budget. Like we do, like they exist for sure. Like the like, you know, Tsukihime and whatever Type Moon's doing.
Wish on the Holy Night, yeah.
Yeah, and like now, like Spike Chunsoft is putting all their money into the I series, which are trying to be a bit more like 3D adventure gamey. But like in this one, it's just like, yeah, no, like this is a team who like acknowledges where they came from, aren't ashamed of it, and are basically like they're putting all of their remaining money and threatening to go bankrupt to just make this mega game.
It's very uncommon that we get high profile visual novels that are like universally praised as well on release too. Like it usually takes time for it to kind of seep into it, or like to really, you know, it's not like the last one I could really think of was like 13 Sentinels off the top of my head. You know,
and this is an interesting thing about this is like it's something I feel like we take for granted now. This was a worldwide release. Yes. Years ago, this would have never been a worldwide release. It's kind of crazy.
Considering
it's a worldwide
how
release,
big it is and how much texture is, I need to like reread the credits and see who did the translation, because like whoever worked on localization, not only is localization incredible, it's like you probably didn't get paid enough.
Possibly.
And it has dual audio as well.
Yeah, dual audio. Like, and I will say though, I feel like a lot of Aniplex's localizations have been a bit hit or miss since they've started like getting into games, like the Type Moon stuff, for example. This has been fantastic. No notes. Like, great localization.
Yeah. That's really, I don't know, encouraging to hear. Like despite all my doubts and worries, like I'm still very interested to give this game an honest shot, and hopefully I think I will like it. I just have to really lock in and put in the time after Clair Obscur and whatever other assignments I may get on my platter until then. But I want to sit down and have this game consume my life for kind of like how Xenoblade X Definitive Edition did for the past month or so. I gotta sit down and really put in the hours for this sometime this year.
You're definitely. I'm glad that May is a slow month, because I basically have put myself in a position to say okay, fine, I will clock into 100 line every single day in May, while I just wait for June, the June craziness to come.
I know it's gonna be tough. I definitely will get clips here done this month, but I don't know how much of 100 line I'll get done. It's right now I have it split between Clair Obscur is my desktop game, and 100 line is my slow, gradual deck game until it graduates to my desktop game. I don't know yet. It's hard juggling these games, and that's there's other game releases that I want to get to. I think Doll's Nest recently came out, and that's on my radar. Seems to be people have been really liking that. And there's 2 other releases this week that just released this week that are smaller type games that I want to get to. I'm like, oh man, we're gonna find time for any of these, along with the Shadow Drop Oblivion remastered. I enjoyed Oblivion back in the day. I definitely want to check that out. It's a lot. And another big thing that GOG dropped that we'll talk about later. I'm like, fuck. And then that just came out too. So anything else you want to tell us about 100 line before we move on, Cullen? I'm glad that we were able to make time for it here and to have you on about this, because this seems to be a really special release of this game.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it for me.
Okay, cool.
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves too much, but what are the chances of 2 at least candidates for Game of the Year type stuff launch right in our wheelhouse on the exact
On the
same,
same
day.
day?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's they're nuts, and this is like two completely brand new IP. They're not from any like established series. They might have like for one of them definitely established creators, but it's a whole different series altogether. Amazing, incredible week for games, especially in our wheelhouse.
Oh yeah.
Just
Mhm.
oh, thank you, Colin, for joining us on talking about 100 Line. We hope to hear
Yeah, of
more
course.
from you as you play more through it. We're definitely probably going to talk about it, near the end of the year. And I hope to get around to it and, see where I land on it too. It seems to be, I feel like it's, I feel like it's almost like a duty for me as someone who really loves visual novels to, get through this game before the year ends. um, we'll see. We'll see. That's awesome though. I'm really glad to hear from you about this.
So before we move on into news, Colin, are you going to have to step out here at this
I
point?
do.
It's been, I know, 2.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm glad I was very happy you were able to stick around as long as you did. So thank you for doing that for us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, I do gotta bounce. I gotta go do a bunch of chores and errands. But yeah, next time I come on for whatever game I cover next, I'll be like, yeah, no, I'm 900 hours in and only 20 endings, so things are going
There you
well.
Awesome. Yeah, this is the perfect video game, guys.
Guys, it is perfect. It's just 1,000,000,000 hours long. It's cool. But yeah, I'll talk to you later. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks, Colin.
Thanks,
All
Colin.
right, bye bye.
Bye.
Yep, and Chow also had to step out. So I know we expected this going in. We had a lot of huge releases. Well, really the major 2 releases, and then a lot of news that we've kind of teased up through this. So now we have to go into that. I guess does anyone else have anything else to say before we go into doing one article shout out and then heading into news? All right, let's roll right into it. The last article shout out, this is just a real quick thing, is that we did get a feature up on the site from Junior, who has been playing a private server version of Final Fantasy 11. I'm not sure what the proper term is, but it's like a WoW classic type server in terms of it's currently the game as it was around the Chains of Promathia expansion. Doesn't have like the trusts added, the extra fast travel, the waypoints, like the solo friendly QOL that even when I played Final Fantasy.
I believe it's called an era server, like
There you
of
go.
this era.
Yeah, so it's very much him and his experience playing through Final Fantasy 11 in that era specific private server. So, as someone who's just dabbled in Final Fantasy 11 like 5 years ago at this point, it's a fascinating read, and it kind of is a fun read in the context of MMOs. Kind of, I don't want to say they're a dying genre, but they're a shifted genre from what they were even 10, and in Final Fantasy 11's case 20 years ago, to now where they have to both cater to the MMO diehard and the ones that want a really convenient solo level experience. And I know that there are, MMO is such a broad genre, like any other RPG genre, that you have to paint with a broad stroke when you say anything that's too general. But to see it specifically in the context of Final Fantasy 11, it's a fun op-ed from Junior and its experience with Final Fantasy 11 in this private server. So did want to give that a shout out before we go into news. So news, a lot of big things here. We probably might not be able to dive as much time into all of these to the extent that we would with no boundary conditions, with no constraints. But here we are 2.5 hours into our podcast going into these, but we'll just knock them through. We'll probably start with some of our big heavy hitters here. The big one, we kind of touched upon this, is of course, we were expecting this. It was kind of leaked all over the place. A lot of people were kind of, queued up onto this. Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion did get shadow dropped on April 22nd. It is remastered. It is launched on, consoles and PC. And it is, as someone who has not played Oblivion, apparently it is like super faithful, even to the extent that like old mods tend to work. Like it's
Interesting.
and it's
Okay.
like,
Huh.
and obviously I have not dived into this, myself, having not played Oblivion, but some people like were using, like, obviously Oblivion is a 18-year-old game at this point. I forget how old it is, 2006, I believe. And it's rendered on top of the original like Game Brio engine, whatever they've done to like gussy it up. I don't have the vocabulary, the expertise to talk like exactly how they've done it, but apparently it's done very well. How well, it's hard to say because of it on Game Pass, the Microsoft publishing of Bethesda titles now, et cetera, et cetera. But obviously, we have a bunch of guides on the site from Scott, who's a big Oblivion fan. Josh has talked about he's played Oblivion. It's actually a blind spot for me. So talking about May being a quote unquote slow month, definitely one for me to be like, all right, that's something that is now in my backlog, I guess, because I do want to play this.
You'll enjoy it, I think. It's a cool game. It's a cool game.
I have seen the meme of like Danny DeVito, like Skyrim is just dumbed down compared to Morrowind and Oblivion, and people playing it, having not played it, like I get it. It is like it's actually like this is why Bethesda, does have the reputation that it has. It it did exist before Skyrim did for a while. So, any other comments on Oblivion, or we might be able to speak to that as more people here on the podcast actually get a chance to potentially get their feet wet and play through it.
I'm glad that it's just a pretty. It's prettied up, but it also, like as you mentioned, it does kind of like all the jank from like in terms of like NPC behavior in it, and the way that like it's very unrealistically charming in the way that like people react to you in that game, and they've still kept that faithful. But they've made certain changes. I heard there's like level scaling changes, which is kind of like one of the big criticisms of the original, where I guess a really, really short, concise way to put it is like there are certain level thresholds in the original game that like if you get to that level, the enemy scaling in the world will get bumped up, and sometimes it'd be like very unfair to you because of like let's say you reach level 8 now that you reach level 8, like these bandits now have like excessively geared now and can like kill you in like 2 to 3 hits, even though they were doing like feather damage to you, like being at level 7, for example. It's like that was one of the pain points of the original that a lot of mods eventually fixed, but this one seems to like have smoothened that out inherently. It's and I believe Squad has also laid out some of the more enhancements and quality of life improvements they've added to this remaster. I know, Mikhail, you've gotten hands on with this in terms of like Steam Deck impressions. Do you have anything to add on performance on Steam Deck, and also any other improvements that you saw firsthand when testing out this game?
Yeah, so I played it on more than that. I played it on. So I've been playing. I decided to, when the rumor started, it's gonna release soon and all. I was like, there's a very good chance this might actually release, and there's also a very good chance I'm gonna be covering it. So I downloaded Oblivion Game of the Year edition on one of my Steam decks, and I figured it out. I learned that it didn't have controller support like the PC version.
Yeah.
So I had to like look for a community layout, and I started playing that, and I was like pretty good on all that. And then I remembered I also owned it on Xbox backward compatibility, so I downloaded it there and I started playing it there as well. Like this was, I think, a few weeks ago, and I was just prepping in case it does shadow drop that I will be playing it, and I started playing it, and I was talking to a friend of mine who like how the meme is, right? Like whenever a new game comes out, they just say, "Oh, they've ruined it. The old one was better." So he's one of those who said Oblivion is like completely nonsense. Like Morrowind is the real deal. And when Skyrim came out, he's like, "Oh, I wish they went back to Oblivion." Like it's annoying, one of those types. So he still likes Oblivion. So he was asking me how I found it, and I told him I'm enjoying this more than Skyrim because like Skyrim was my first one, and every version of that game has like crapped out on me with like saves corrupting and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I was like hoping Oblivion like is fine. So I think even more when you start in like this prison or something, all of these games start the same way. You do like your prologue tutorial thing, and then you choose your class or whatever, and you get to the big open world, and you have this wow moment and stuff like that. So Oblivion's been fun like that. When I got the remaster, I first played it on Xbox Series X through the Game Pass version while I was downloading it on Steam Deck and ROG Ally. And I really enjoy the remaster. Like like you mentioned how it's built on the original, so it feels like that, but it still feels like modern in a way, even though it's like still being built on that old thing. It's kind of like Ninja Gaiden 2
Yeah.
Black, which they I think they like people who data mined it, they found out it's using a hybrid of Ninja Gaiden 2 Sigma and some elements of Ninja Gaiden
It's
2,
almost like an
like the
Unreal Engine
original.
5 wrapper
Yeah.
on
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So So with Oblivion Remastered, like I really like, I know the visuals, there's like a point of contention because they've gone for a more realistic and grounded look, so there's a lot less color compared to the original game. And like I did this in my article. I was like, Oblivion's like kind of a big deal even for me because I was enjoying it. I was like, let me do more than I usually do. So I was playing the game side by side on two Steam decks
Ooh,
to like
okay.
see how just to see how the original felt, how it controlled, and to see how the remaster felt. And honestly, the remaster has a ton of technical issues right now on like every platform,
Oh.
like Unreal Engine 5 stuttering and stuff like that, to the point where so here's one more thing. The game on PC, like most people on Nvidia hardware would just use DLSS because why wouldn't you use that? But when you go to AMD, in addition to XeSS and FSR, you can also use Unreal Engine 5's TSR, which is temporal super resolution. And the options aren't so obvious for this. So I noticed everyone who, like as soon as the game came out, you had tons of YouTubers and like sites put out, oh, here's how Oblivion is on Steam Deck. None of them actually tested this, and TSR is actually the best upscaling in games like Tekken 8 on low end hardware. So I was like, how are people not seeing this? So I started playing it with that, and I stuttering like mad even when I set it to 10% or 20% resolution scale.
Wow.
And I was like, this is something wrong with the PC port in general.
Yeah.
And that's now come to like we know that for sure now because Alex Battaglia from Digital Foundry posted his detailed PC like analysis video, and he just said this is I think he said this is one of the worst PC ports he's played alongside Jedi Survivor, which is not a good sign. So, but yeah, technical issues aside, I'm enjoying Oblivion Remastered a lot. I think it uses like a slightly higher quality audio, so maybe the CD audio instead of compressed audio. The voice acting is still funny. Like despite like starting the game a few weeks ago to try it out, this is still my first proper playthrough of Oblivion. So I'm just enjoying exploring, messing around with the world. Like you can still see some NPCs glitch and like you go and steal stuff and all. It never gets old. So I'm enjoying it a
Yeah.
lot. But I'm going to stick with the Xbox Series X version because despite it being Steam Deck verified, it's not a good experience on Steam Deck. And the ROG Ally, you can like run it at higher resolution and make it look better, but there's just constant hitching. And in a game where most of the fun is exploring the open world, at least according to me so far,
Yeah.
that's not a good thing to happen. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely sounding like you wait for some patches if you're on the PC version. Seems like Xbox seems okay. Don't know how the PlayStation version's doing.
Yeah, I was like if it had a physical release, I would have probably bought it on PS5 eventually, but right now I'm good with just sticking with the
Yeah.
Xbox version, and I will be like returning to the Steam Deck and all to check because like it's Steam Deck verified and it actually runs and looks worse than Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which Valve had marked as unsupported. So good job, Valve.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and also there's like I recall seeing like some balance passes like unarmed combat like seems to be like way more stronger now than the original release of this. The I don't know if you remember this era of PC gaming, Brian, but like just to date this game, I remember and my friends were recalling like the original release of this game on PC. The default keybinds of it was E was jump and spacebar was use on this game, if I recall.
Yeah,
Uh,
it is kind of right at that point. Yeah.
we're like, oh,
Mhm.
that's right. So for people who think like, wow, has spacebar always been used as jump for games? Like, no, that was not that has been relatively new actually. Looking back at it, yeah, it's cool that they did this, but definitely, as Mikhail's mentioned, maybe wait for some patches for them to iron out some of the issues on this, and wait, and like if you wanted to play this with mods, wait to see like how the mod scene develops in this because not all mods work on this, and I know like when it first released, like there was a lot of uncertainty whether like either existing mods or new mods would continue to be able to be used on it. I know there's been a lot of it's very stormy waters right now because it's you got shadow dropped. It kind of came up on people, and people don't really. There's been like there's a billion freaking Oblivion mods, so you know beware
The
on that end.
the one thing the one thing over here is usually I just say if you have Game Pass you can like download it and try it, but the Game Pass PC version is apparently not as good as the Steam version because they pushed out an update which removed upscaling for some reason or something like that. So like people who had DLSS, it's still enabled, but you can't access those settings anymore, and they're working into fixing that. So this is like another situation where the Steam version is better than the Microsoft Store version. And it's a little embarrassing because this is a Microsoft game now. So yeah.
Yeah. And
Hasn't stopped them in the past with issues like that. So
and for whatever metric this is worth, they also claim that the obviously it's been selling pretty well according to like at least Steam DB numbers, and I'm sure it's been doing well on all the consoles it's released on. But they've mentioned that it's had 4 million players playing it now. For that doesn't mean 4 million copies sold. That means 4 million people have at least booted it up. And that also counts for like Game Pass numbers as well. So, don't take that as like sales numbers. It's like saying, hey, a lot of people are playing this, and it's cool to see that, whether it's people discovering it for the first time or whether it's like a replay because it's an important game to a lot of people. It's cool to see that this game is thriving, and that it's kind of been interesting to see people have been, as you mentioned, Mikhail, like some people have grown fond of Oblivion in a post Skyrim world and waiting for Elder Scrolls 6 world and a post Starfield world. People's like, oh yeah, Oblivion was one hell of a game, huh?
And then in a completely this is I don't know if this could be more opposite, this next news story, because it's a game we were not expecting to see again. You kind of teased it a little bit just a bit ago, Josh. We last talked about the GOG Preservation Program. Of course, they do a lot of good work frequently throughout the years, and we touch in whenever they do something relevant to our purview. We talked about it about a year ago, a little over a year ago, when out of nowhere they brought Alpha Protocol back to PC with preserving it in a way where it was completely playable, worked out of the box. You didn't have to mod it or do weird, third-party stuff to get it to work well on PC. Well, we're going to talk about the GOG Preservation Program again, and the game that they have decided to release Shadow Drop based on requests from the Preservation Program, like people who put in and write and say what they'd like to see, is Breath of Fire 4. Is now available on GOG as part of its preservation program. Works with Windows 10 and 11, upgraded DirectX renderer, so works out of the box, and it's basically just preserved. That's kind of been GOG's mission statement forever now. When I saw this announced, the feedback was unanimously of elation. And maybe it sounds a little bit strong, but that's kind of what the feedback was. I have not played a Breath of Fire game, so I need to ask the panel here, if you want to think of it that way, as someone who's on the fringe, why Breath of Fire 4? To me, I'm just what is it specifically about this game?
4 had a classic PC version.
Yep, that's the reason why. Okay. But it's a beloved entry, but there was also a PC version pre-existing which made this possible.
So it came out in 2000, which is right around that time when Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 8 also had PC versions.
That's right.
So it actually only came out in Europe and Japan. It was never a box release in the United States. And it came out a few years after the PlayStation 1 version, I believe. When GOG has their preservation program, I believe they call it Dreamless. I think any game that has a PC release is, you can vote for it or vouch for it or whatever.
I think you just put anything. You can put anything. There's a one for Xenogears. I don't know.
Oh, really?
That's on a PC. Yeah.
I didn't think you could just ask for ports.
I mean, it's probably not gonna. It's not likely that they're gonna make a port for it, but you can list it.
Oh.
It's all fan made,
But anyway, that's the reason why it's 4, because it had a PC version. Breath of Fire 3 and 4 are usually considered the best 2 games in the series. I think 3 might be a little bit better as a game, but 4 has an excellent art style, and I really like its characters and story, where 3 is a little bit more weird and not as good of a localization. But yeah, it's a great game. I bought it already. I will probably replay it or hope to replay it at some point. And I never played the PC version, of course. Apparently, the original PC version was kind of junky in terms of crashing issues and other things. And apparently, this version, they've fixed practically all of the major problems that were with the original release, which is similar with Alpha Protocol. They tidied it up, not like a remaster, but to basically on Windows 11 or 10 or 11, you can run this game without many major issues. I do know there are some like filtering issues or filtering things that you can kind of edit out with some mods to get it look more like the PS1 version. But there's already guides on how to do that. But otherwise, I think it did exactly what it was supposed to do. This game, as of a week ago, the most readily available way to buy it was to like boot up your PlayStation 3 and go to the PSN and buy it that way. So now you can just go to GOG and get it. So
yeah, there's a fantastic PC setup guide on dragnear.net. That like if you want like per pixel, like a more pixel look to it, because right now what we have is a little bit more smeared, and that's intentional. On a CRT, like it was definitely a game made for CRT displays, so that's why it looks smeared on like a digital display. But Dragnear has like a really fantastic PC setup guide. Like if you want a more pixelated look to it, that's like that makes it more of per pixel, emphasizing the pixels of the game, like sprites. They have a setup guide for that. But there's also like some people are also recommending like maybe looking into like some CRT filters alongside that to make it emulate more of the look of the game, how it originally looked on like CRT TVs, because it is definitely a game made with that display in mind, at that era. So
what's kind of funny about this Dragnear site, I was like, oh, is this some Breath of Fire fan site that I'm not aware of? And the answer is yes. But the answer is, I guess the site is only like a year old. This isn't some classic Breath of Fire fan site when the series was like actually alive. Someone decided to make one.
One though, right?
Yeah, it looks like one. I was just thinking when I first saw it, I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat. It's like a classic Breath of Fire fan site that still exists. Like, no, it's a new Breath of Fire fan site that looks like a classic Breath of Fire fan site.
I was gonna say, does it look like it's from the era?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
That kind of rules.
It's barely a year old. But they're clearly Breath of Fire fans, and yeah, they have a setup for the GOG version just to kind of like tweak things a bit.
Yeah, that's Dragnear, DRAGNIER.net. Go check it out. They have a great setup and kind of detailing. If you want to get this game and also like tweak the settings of it to get a more crisp look out of it.
Now I know there are a lot of opinions on this, but I think Breath of Fire 4 very well might be the best looking PlayStation 1 RPG.
I can see that. I can see where it comes from.
If not the best, it's like top tier.
Yeah.
Really good.
It definitely had a look going for it. Like that was Capcom at the top of their game at that era.
I have two more comments. Sorry to interrupt.
One, no, go for it.
I have seen some people questioning, like, is the censorship still in? And the answer is yes. This was kind of back in the late 90s, early aughts, where there were more edits for kind of across the gamut for violence, for sex stuff, and even for, I forget the character's name, but the dog character. In the original Japanese version, he's kind of like a drunken boxer, but instead of boxer, he's like a samurai. He's like a drunken samurai. But they took out like all reference of him drinking, and now he's just like sleepy, I guess. Things like that. My guess is this is based off of like the PC version, and that's basically their starting point, what they had to work with. So I did see some people kind of upset, or not upset, but disappointed that they didn't like uncut it. But that was probably out of scope. They probably just had to work with what they had.
Yeah, I mean, usually like when they do these ports, they are really just ports to be made with just operating on modern systems. It's like when they did re-release like the Dino Crisis games, they didn't really edit anything about them intrinsically. It's like, hey, we just made sure that this is running relatively well on modern platforms. There's no crashing or any severe issues, and there's easy ways to get out of the game on PC.
Like, for example, there's a scene in the game when FuRyu like beheads a character, and in the Western version, that's like, I forget exactly how, but it's like obscured because I didn't want to show a beheading. It's that sort of stuff. Yeah. There's a little bit of that. My second comment is that like Breath of Fire's 1, 2, and even 3, I would say none of them have a good localization, and some of them, Breath of Fire 2 especially, are like infamous examples of a bad localization is Breath of Fire 2. But 4, I think, is when Capcom really got like their feet under them in terms of back in the day. Obviously they're a lot known for like arcade stuff, fighting stuff, and the RPG stuff maybe had a rough start with Breath of Fire. But here, I feel like Breath of Fire 4's localization, despite some 90s era censorship, is actually pretty well done for the time.
Kind of reminds me of the Lunar discussion from 2 weeks ago, where it was just like that era. Even though Lunar would have been a bit older than the year 2000.
Mm-hmm.
It was a welcome surprise because it was like GOG teased this out of nowhere with just a silhouette of Ryu, but like no one could really pinpoint it until Adam was like, "Oh, it's Ryu," and just like posted up an image of the perfect like 1-to-1 match for match the silhouette up there. I'm like, "Oh yeah, it is Ryu from Breath of Fire." Fuck. So that was fun, and then they quickly released like several hours later, just out of nowhere, shadow drop. I hope this does really well and sends a message to Capcom. For
I bought it.
Any Breath of Fire initiative to get going, I think everyone who is aware of the series wants it to come back in a big way, whether it's through re-releasing or remasters or remakes or anything. Like Breath of Fire fans just want some life in the series at the moment, and it's cool to see this happen.
Yeah, I've never played the series before, but I bought it as soon as it went up on GOG, like I did with Dino Crisis. I just bought them to support. I don't know when I'll get to them, but yeah, very happy they're bringing them. Even the Resident Evil stuff which they brought back was so cool because I kept saying Capcom keeps remaking these games. Just put out a classics collection or something, but it's okay. I have them on GOG now.
Here's the shoe dropping for a tease that we had. Was it either a week ago or 2 weeks ago? It was the newest project from FuRyu. So I know there's a little bit of baggage when you say something like that, but let's just go through it. So they've announced the new project. It is a game called Varlet. It is a school life RPG that very much is in the vein of, I have to make the comparison, I'm sorry, of Persona, though I have not played other FuRyu games, so I don't know. Like Adam, you played Monarch. This is from the same. No, this isn't from the same.
So
team.
that's the thing is they kind of teased it as like this is the Monarch follow-up, but it's not developed by the same dev team. Monarch was Landcars. So I guess let me back up a bit. All of these games are like published and like basically like facilitated by FuRyu. But FuRyu, while they might have like some key staff like production type or maybe even like creative type, staff, they outsourced the bulk of their development to other developers like Landcars and Aquaria, or however you pronounce it. They actually were behind shoot, I'm getting them mixed up. They also work with
Caligula 2?
No, Caligula 2 is Historia. I think it's Caligula 1. So I need to check. See, that's the thing is they work with a bunch of these different developers that they outsource to. So I want to say it was the original Caligula effect that Aquaria, I can't even pronounce it, worked with.
It's like AQURIA.
Yeah, it's not weird. Aqua. It's not Aqua. It's like just AQURIA.
It's like Akuria, yeah, something like that.
But anyways, yeah. So this isn't Landcars, even though they kind of tease it as if it was
It sounds like a Monarch lineage of sorts that they keep pushing forth, and that I have no idea what that actually means because they have this they're like. They have this Team Noir on it that they attach to Monarch. I don't know how Team Noir, like newly labeled Team Noir, is related to Monarch in this aspect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I haven't. But they keep saying this like it is some sort of like Monarch lineage to this project.
Oh yeah, so Aquaria also developed Cry Machina.
Oh, that's that. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also Sword Art Online, a few Sword Art Online games.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, I shared this with a friend of mine. You're not alone, Brian. The first thing they said, like verbatim, was Persona at home.
I mean,
And I never want to make like the, has only seen Boss Baby's vibes. Like, I'm sure there might be a better point of comparison, but it seems like it's the vibe they're going for. And of course, that's a big, that's the audience they're trying to court.
I guess we should mention
regular,
before we detail this game. This game is released on August 28th for PS5, Switch, and PC, worldwide
thank you.
simultaneous. Which is, but it's not totally like out of nowhere, right? It's definitely it's focused on school and RPG systems, and even the menu design is very Persona inspired. It's very poppy, vibrant, and kind of in your face in the same vein as Persona. Like there's definitely some battle UI and visuals that's like, hey, they're real. You can tell that at least part of their inspiration was very much from Persona. It's not out of left or out of nowhere on this, for at least for Varlet, and for better or for worse, I don't know if they took the greatest lessons from Persona, if it was part of their inspiration, because some of the battle screenshots that they showed, it's like, man, this kind of, looks like puke on the screen, and it's I could say they're trying to go for something, but it just doesn't look great. Like on a surface level, it's like you look at it, it's like, oh god, that's a lot of info on the screen, or there's a lot of color. There's a lot of colors on the screen that don't mesh well, I'd say.
I think there's the one major point of note for this release is that it's a worldwide simultaneous and self-published. It's not them working through NIS America or Spike Chunsoft, who like they've had their games released through those two, if I recall
Yeah.
correctly, in the past.
Also, Marvelous. Everyone forgets about Trinity Trigger.
I did. I definitely did.
I reviewed that. I gave it a 5 out of 10.
I think didn't you score Renatus 4?
I gave that a 4. Yes.
Yeah.
I am not the FuRyu guy, even though I'm sort of the FuRyu guy.
I think for people who don't know what FuRyu is, a lot of us got FuRyu. Like I use that as a verb because you see them announce a new project which has like they bring up names from different franchises. Like here's the Persona 1 writer, here's the composer of this other game you love, here's the artist or something, and you get hyped and you play the game and it's usually like middle of the road. So it happened. I think it happened quite a bit with Renatus, right? Because they managed getting Kingdom Hearts fans and those who wanted Final Fantasy versus together and hyped for it.
Oh yeah, that
And yeah,
Shimomura, Nojima, they had a World Ends with You
yep.
collab with Reinatus. I mean that's FuRyu is, for better or for worse, that's how they market their games. Like, hey, there are these veterans in the Japanese game industry that are working with us on a new project, and most of the time it doesn't really pan out. Unfortunately, like, it's not like I look at a new FuRyu project like, man, I hope it's a bad game. It's like, no, I hope these games are good, and they just never really are. They kind of have interesting concepts to them but their execution is like really far off the mark most of the time.
I ended up liking two of them, like Cry Machina and Caligula too. But yeah, like we'll see what happens with this one, and I look forward to Adam's review.
Well, I think I like Alliance Alive. That was like the one that I really liked the most out of them.
What was it? Lost Dimension? That was a good one.
Oh yeah, that was back on PS3 and was it PSP or Vita? Yeah.
Yeah, it also had a PC port, which was not great, but yeah.
So the setup for Varlet on this one is that you're kind of part of this student support services group that investigates like urban legends around the school campus. So you're kind of like building friendships, and there's like a bond friendship system in it as you're solving these urban legend cases. There's this triad stat systems where there's like 6 attributes between light and dark triads. So light triad stats are things like morality, sympathy, and altruism, while dark triad stats are Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and narcissism. And all I can think of when I'm reading this is like, isn't that like that Australian Fallout RPG that came out like last year in a really dire state and they had to delay? Because they
Yeah, it
kind of had
does
like
have
similar,
that, yeah.
they had similar like stats wise, of like different like philosophies and ideologies that like you put stats into. Like, it was like kind of funny. That's the first thing I thought of when they unveiled this. So they unveiled the first trailer of this and several screenshots on this. Seems okay. I mean, I don't know. I'm not really wowed by anything that they've shown, but I'd want to see like a more extended gameplay showcase on this. I think some of the at least Japanese voice acting cast is fun, like Aoi Koga. But I don't know, man. It's
I always wanted to live my Machiavellian fantasies.
school life. Yeah. Same actually, you know. But it's hard to get excited based on FuRyu's track record. Not that I'm saying that this will end up bad, but I'm just saying, FuRyu really needs to hopefully step it up and deliver something special.
A couple other smaller announcements this week. Fire Emblem: The Sacred Stones is now available on Nintendo Switch Online, which I know is it's always just kind of fun to see those games become slightly more accessible rather than playing them. Well, I guess I should say officially accessible. Of course, there are ways to play it, but now it's available on Switch Online.
Good music.
A lot of people's great music. Whenever I think of Sacred Stones, I originally played it in Japanese first, and do not understand a lick of Japanese, but I was still able to get like 60% of the story because it is that straightforward.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, but it's a fun game, classic era Fire Emblem. It was one of their first steps at allowing for infinite grinding with the tower and the ruins, which of course is like a staple of the series now, to be able to fight infinitely or do random battles or whatever. And I don't know if it was the first, but it was still relatively different at the time with that one. We talked about D4 Enterprise last week. This was for what was it for last week?
Dinosaur.
Anyways, bearing the lead, we talked last week a little bit about having some really old, really classic titles be made available here. This one is Japan only for now. I say for now. I don't know if there's really any likelihood for these specific titles to get out of Japan. But they're releasing a physical compilation of 4 classic East titles: East 1, 2, 3, and 5. These are like PC 88, 89, Super Famicom games. Releasing a physical version of them in Japan for PC in next year for 2026. So
why skip 4?
I don't know, because there's like different versions of 4, but they weren't made by Falcom.
Yeah, 4
Yeah,
was
'cause
great.
they were. I forget the developers, but they were like, to me it feels like they were the CDI Zelda games of East titles. Like they were just like mercenaried out.
That's a
to, like,
funny
different groups.
comparison.
They were not developed by Falcom. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
But they were received pretty well. Like I know Chow had to step out, but I thought he had a pretty
Oh
good.
yeah, he likes it. Yeah,
He likes Donavies.
yeah, they weren't bad. They just weren't developed by Falcom. It's just it. But yeah, I mean, it's cool that they're doing this. I mean, it's fucking
It's a physical
expensive.
PC game on a CD. It's like
It-
that's rare. That is so
it's-
rare.
It's 28,160 yen. It's quite a bit, but it's it's probably gonna be worth it. It's probably gonna be looking awesome.
Mhm.
Playing great versions of these games.
Mhm.
As you said, PC 88 and PC 98, along with several other ones on this. And besides
Mhm.
East 5, obviously just Super Famicom East 5. It's really cool. I'm trying to think of, are these already available on the Egg console, Adam? These old
East
ones?
1 and 2 are. I'm not sure about 3.
Okay.
Now, is it the expert version of East 5 or not?
Let's see. I'm looking at other news for the week because I know we're kind of past the 3-hour mark of the podcast. A few updates for some previously released titles. I'll just kind of like quickly go through these. Xenoblade Chronicles Cross did get a patch update. The main highlights here is that now music does not restart from the beginning at the end of combat. Hooray!
Oh, yeah.
Also, they fixed a duping glitch, and I remember going to the Reddit, people being like, "I'm refusing to update until I get all my scale parts because I'm definitely gonna use this duping glitch." So, if you don't update to 1.02, you can still dupe scale parts using the AM console or something. They
That's
fixed
funny.
that. And I know they fixed apparently some augment issues, like some augments that affect overdrive, which of course is new to this version of the game. And I saw some people say like they're like buttoning up exploits that some people are like, well, I'm just not going to update, and like that's totally valid. I just might quickly pass through this next one, though it is kind of interesting. We got more details for the upcoming Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster for Switch 2. More and more people seem to be cluing in on exactly what this release seems to be, that we kind of managed to catch 3 weeks ago, or whenever this was first announced, had how I think it's all but confirmed, not from the horse's mouth, but based on all the available information, that this is a remaster of the original Japanese version of Bravely Default Flying Fairy, not the version that was received overseas, which was subtitled for the sequel in Japan. So it doesn't have the battle rate encounter that can go to 0. It means the back half of the game, likely, not confirmed, but likely is going to be as it originally was.
Well, they're making some tweaks.
Yeah, there's also some evidence that there's some aspects of For the Sequel where like that people caught like there's a
Gotcha.
Nemesis boss battle in like in the one of the trailers or the trailer for it, and that was only for the sequel. So right now, this upcoming Bravely Default HD Remaster version is like sort of a mishmash of like there's some parts of For the Sequel, but not all of it. So it's like some other weird hybrid now of it, because there's evidence that supports both cases of this, and it's like people are like, what the fuck's going on? So yeah, yes to all of the above, but also yeah.
Let's see. Also talking about upcoming Switch 2 releases. We're going to talk a lot about Switch 2 over the next couple months, it feels like. Raidou Remastered, of course, coming out for more than Switch 2, but was announced for kind of one of the. In a way, I'm kind of seeing it as a flagship title for Switch 2, releasing on June 19th. We got the English voice actor announcements for, of course, being added to the remaster for Raidou, the Mystery of the Soulless Army. The ones I hear that I recognize are Ray Chase, of course, from Final Fantasy 15 fame, is Goto, a cat. I've not played the original, so sorry if I massacre any of this. Don Bennett is voicing Tay. Zoe Zija, who is that one character from Fire Emblem, whose name I'm Claude, is Munakata. And then, of course, Chris Okawa, Stephen Fu, and Kayla Mills. Those ones I don't know as well, though. I'm sure other people might recognize them, but I just don't. Was there anything else about these quality of life changes or combat that they showed this very small little 30 second trailers alongside?
I mean,
voice actor
most of it,
announcements?
yeah, most of it has already been shown in the trailer. It's not a big
Yeah.
deal. Yeah, we can move on, but it's just just showing off.
I want to mention one thing that Cullen wanted us to mention.
Oh, what is it?
There's a battle transition change in the remaster. In the original version on PlayStation 2, when you go into battle, it's just like a swipe across the screen, like almost unremarkable. It's just like a really quick transition from you're on the field and now you're in battle. It's like a swipe, right? Like a blur almost. Yeah. Now they put like literally like the character art of Raidou, like a PNG of him, and that slides across the screen.
Sliding across the screen.
Yeah, and it's kind of awkward.
Go Raidou, go!
It does seem something like from an old cartoon or an anime, like da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
This one is kind of confirming what we already knew, but with a little bit more detail. This is for the interesting port of Wild Hearts to the Switch 2, Wild Hearts S. One of the ones that's it's one of the most out there ports for the launch of that console. And we did see that Wild Hearts, which released in 2023 for PC and PlayStation and Xbox, was a 3-player, Monster Hunter like. But on Wild Hearts S for the Switch 2, it is going to 4-player, and that's the thing they put at the top of their content and feature differences between Wild Hearts S and Wild Hearts. So the maximum player count has been increased from 3 to 4. As part of presumably as because of that, there is no cross-platform multiplayer. You don't need an EA account, which is, thank goodness. So you do still need Nintendo Switch Online to play online in 4-player for Wild Hearts S. This one I didn't realize. Oh wait, no, it does support the new game chat. I thought I read that it didn't. So it does support game chat, which is the Discord for Switch 2, which is good. They talked about a little bit about balance adjustments and things like that. It's been too long since I've played Wild Hearts to really speak to like, oh, I know what they talk about here. But making it easier to challenge high difficulty bosses in the early stages. And there also is a note here that bosses will run away less often. which I do vaguely remember. Like you have to chase them from arena to arena, which Monster Hunter likes do. But Wild Hearts, I do remember there was a lot of like you'd get a few hits in, you'd fight for 30 seconds, then you'd run after them for 2 minutes, and then you fight for 30 seconds, and you run after them for 2 minutes. So they say they've tweaked the prevalence of that in Wild Hearts S. Oh, I get game chat is supported, game share is not supported. That's
Okay.
what I was missing. We're luckily there actually wasn't a ton of news this week. Well, there was the big headlines, but in terms of just number of headlines, we're actually kind of nearing the end here. We got a new trailer for Elden Ring Nightreign. That's one of the big announcements for May, coming out at the end of the month. This is the class for the Recluse, which is a like a cursed mage necromancer type character.
Yeah, I think there's one of the
Let's see.
characters that you can play with at the beta, like the spellcaster.
Mhm.
Cool character.
Going into release dates at the end of this month, in just a few days, April 29th, Wartales is getting another DLC, the Beast Hunt. Wartales, even on its base game, it took me over 100 hours to really play through, and now it's got like 3 pretty beefy DLCs on it. So it seems like it's got a pretty fervent fan base, and the developers are doing a lot of good support on that. I guess that game turned 2 years old this month.
Giga game, man. That's
Mhm.
they can continue to pump out content for that game.
Mhm. Death End Request Code Z. We've talked about this one. It came out last year in Japan on September 19th. We've kind of gotten over the last couple weeks the details for its release in English and in the West. It'll be releasing on consoles digitally and North America physically on May 13th. It'll be coming out physically for consoles in PlayStation consoles in Europe on June 27th. The announcement from this week is that it is also being planned to release for Steam later this year. So we'll have a PC release, but no specific date on that. So it's kind of I hate these staggered releases because I hope I got all the details right. But May for physical in the US, and console digital, June for European digital consoles, and then Steam later. So kind of staggered release in English throughout this year.
I think this is the game which was originally also going to be on Switch, but they canceled the Switch release, and everyone was like kind of disappointed in that, obviously, because the first Death End Request 1 and 2 were there, and then there was no Steam release, so I was confused because they port everything to PC. At least it seems like they do, but that was not happening. But now it is later on, though, so it's a little weird.
That's the Compile Heart Idea Factory classic in the West, at least. It's all staggered always. Even the release, even the details of like when it's coming is staggered. Like it's coming to like right now. I bet you we get Steam later this year. That's the news release. Then we'll get like a month window time frame, season time frame, like next week or 2 weeks. Then like 2 weeks after that is like the exact date or so. It's like they fucking do this shit. I don't
And
like
then
it.
later they'll announce an Xbox version randomly.
Yeah. Ugh, I hate it.
This is another game that we talked about backlogs earlier. A game that I've kind of been interested in, just very curious about. This is Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon. We've talked about this game in the past. It's a primarily first-person Western high fantasy RPG. It's been in early access for a while. It was in early access since 2023. It's getting its full release at the end of May. So on May 23rd, Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon will come out of early access on PC and launch on consoles this year, May 23rd. So a game I'm kind of interested in. It kind of gives me that like a little bit of those like Elder Scrolls at home vibes, but it's got good production values. It seems like it has just like a fun like it gives me some Avowed vibes actually. Looking at this now, having played Avowed. So and in terms of like kind of hybrid melee slash spell casting, which Avowed actually did really well. It's one of the strengths of that game, I think. So maybe that's the reason why I'm so interested in this one now. So I might try this one if I can get through some of the other things that are currently on my plate.
Yeah.
Coming out in just under a month. And then this one, the recently released Super Robot Wars Y, will launch on August 28th.
Yeah,
And I
recently
do know
announced, not
as
released. I know.
oh, sorry, I meant announced, but
Yeah,
my brain
yeah.
is tired
I
because
know.
we're at like the 3. Sorry,
I know. I'll make
but
it short.
I did see you talk a little bit. This is the last headline we have for this podcast, but you were talking a little bit about specifically the roster of this, and I don't know the context of what you were keying in on in terms of the roster for this game.
Yeah, so me and Kite, we follow the Super Robot Wars pretty much religiously. So they first showed this off at a Switch Direct, I believe, just a partial
Mhm.
amount of the roster at that announcement. Then they finally unveiled the full announcement of this game. It's coming out on August 28th for PS5, Switch, and PC worldwide simultaneous. And they showed off the rest of the series. In the first trailer, they showed off like the first season of which from Mercury is going to be here. They're going to show off that Macross Delta, like the first compilation movie. You're gonna have G Gundam, Getter Robo Arc, and so forth. So I'm like, oh, I'm really curious to see what else they have because these seems like a good chunk of these series feel fresh, right? Because Witch from Mercury and Macross Delta, like Macross is a big deal with the whole license situation. Finally getting out of hell in the West for the most part. So it's cool to see. So I was really interested to see the roster, but the roster feels very safe and a lot of like reuse from very recent console SRW games, most notably SRW 30, and before that like SRW T, the VX and T trilogy that came out before 30. So a lot of this is like reuse. Like you have the kind of the mainstays like Zeta Gundam, Char's Counterattack. You have the Dunbines, both Aura Battle of Dunbine and New Story of Aura Battle of Dunbine, because they've all been in recent entries. Battler V or 5 also making a return as well. Then like I really like Majestic Prince, but that kind of had its like it was just recently used in SRW 30. Like I'm okay with it showing up again here because it's like its second entry, and I hope they kind of flesh it out a bit more. But a lot of these are very safe and like you've seen it before. I think there's too much Gundam in this game compared to the rest of the series. Like Endless Waltz is here, Seed Destiny is here along with all the other Gundam series. It feels so slanted in the Gundam direction that I kind of wish there was like a little bit less Gundam for more for other series that would have fit the time frame to come out. Like I would have liked to see Grandam or Rin no Lagrange or Argivolin. Just other out of left field mecha series that they haven't made their debut yet. Come into this game and kind of fill out more of the fresh batch of this. The two brand new series to the franchise that were revealed here was Godzilla Singular Point and Dynazenon. Dynazenon, pretty predictable because Gridman was just SRW 30, and Dynazenon is the follow up, the next Gridman universe series that came after Gridman, as far as the anime adaptations are concerned. And the one that came out of left field, of course, was Godzilla Singular Point, but also not that out of left field because the Netflix Ultraman series made their debut at SRW 30. So Godzilla Netflix also came into this one. It's cool to it's cool to see because you're going to see Godzilla Ultima in this game, which is like a really fucked up version of a Godzilla, kind of like a reality bending god version of a Godzilla will show up in this game. So that'll be really cool. They show off some of the systems with this game. Gonna have supporter characters. They showed off more of the original characters in this game, and they showed off, that if you pre-order early purchase bonuses and pre-order bonuses of this game will have the past VX the SRWV um original characters show up. Some of their units and characters will show up here, and then they have DLC packs um that'll add the SRWX and SRWT original characters and their units in this game, like 5 or 6 of them or something, and a whole batch of like missions. So this is standard procedure for SRW games where like the super awesome editions have a lot more content bundled into them on top of like an already meaty game. So like if you really like the game and want to play more of it, and see more of those characters that you probably played in the past, you can go get those. I mean, I will get them because I like those characters and I want to see more of the game. Um, and they also have just like in uh, normal SRW procedure, they also have an edition that has like the anime theme songs and vocal tracks. So like you can like when a character attacks with a certain attack, like a theme song from the original series will come on with like the original opening or ending and so forth. Which is it adds to it. You're fulfilling that fantasy, and it's always fun to see. So it's I kind of wish the roster was a little bit more out there and more out of left field, but like I said previously, the kind of the cope of this game uh, is that maybe this is like the first part, and maybe it'll be an SRW Y2 that has like a lot of like the follow ups and sequels of these series presented. So who knows? I mean, a lot of these series do have follow ups that may show up if there was a Y2 in the works. We'll see. I mean, not to say that the game will be bad. I'm very interested to see how a lot of the character interactions and how it'll play out. Because that's also a big part of it. But just the series roster on its surface, kind of too safe and doesn't really inspire a lot of like, wow, I'm really really excited. It's like a lot of the same old same old. If you've been in the series, if this is like your first SRW, I'm sure you're like jazzed that that's. But for me, as someone who's been with this for a while, it's kind of eh. But I'll still play
Yeah,
the
that's what
heck
I
out
was
of it.
thinking.
Go
Go
for
ahead,
it,
Miko.
Miko.
That's what I was thinking. Like, since this is the first one releasing on console in the West, maybe they wanted to like have a roster that kind of appeals to that audience, because like I'm not so familiar with most of the like whatever IP they use in Super Robot Wars, but I've been buying the game since like PS4 and Vita when they had those Asia English, and then they did the Asia Switch. And I even have like a separate Steam account that has the Super Robot Wars V and X on Steam because those are region locked.
Yeah,
So yeah, in that case I've played all of them. I've played T, I've played 30. So this one, I don't know. I haven't like looked at the complete thing. I was just looking at the DLC when I was writing about it because yeah, it has the premium sound pack again, which is nice that they're releasing that in the West and all. But I was just thinking that this is probably going to be like designed for console players in the West who never played the series before. But then I just wonder how the naming is going to work for them. Like, are they even going to know what Y means? I don't
yeah.
know what it means.
I mean, they just add like random letters at the end of it. Like they're not really supposed to mean much in the grand scheme of things. They just so many of these games come out. They just attach. It used to be like random, like I don't know, Greek or Latin out of it. Like there's SRW Alpha. You see SRW BX. There's SRW 30 was like it's like the 30th anniversary of the series. That's the reason 30 was there. There's at this point, it's just like just add something at the end of it to distinguish it from the rest, but it doesn't really mean much.
And as someone who's on the fringe, I will say that talking about this might sound really normy of me, but like I get confused between like Gundam G Generation Eternal or other Gundam G Generation
Yeah,
games
yeah,
and Super Robot Wars, and then it's very obvious. But you remind me like this is supposed to be like a crossover series, but I'm looking at the list here. It is very Gundam heavy, and I'm like, all right, so at least a fraction of my confusion is warranted because they are kind of leaning to, half the representation is Gundam.
yeah.
Um, and I'm like, oh,
You're right.
okay. And I can sort of see where you're coming from now, where you're like, I wish it was a little bit more out there. I wish there was like a, and again, I don't really have the knowledge of what would be included, but like something like Eureka 7 or something like that, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, there's something different,
Mhm.
something that hasn't been represented or hasn't been represented recently or often
Yeah.
enough.
Eureka 7 hasn't been in the series for a very long time, so yeah.
Yeah.
I would have loved to see that come back here,
Mm.
but you're absolutely correct.
Yeah, but August 28th, and I believe Kite wrote this article. Let me just make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Kite does have the on the news post for the release date. What is what is represented and which ones are making the debut in Super Robot Wars? And here we are at the end of our podcast at the 3.5 hour mark. So we kind of knew going in that this one was going to be a big one. And of course, thank you to everyone who participated, talking about everything from Oblivion to Clair Obscur to Breath of Fire 4 to 100 Line and all the other things in between, because it was probably one of the biggest random weeks in April that I think we've ever had. It kind of slows down in May, and very much just kinda, because of course a lot of us are just going to be continuing to play through those games, and a lot of them are not, as we talked about with 100 Line, and of course with Oblivion, a lot of them are not short, and Clair Obscur is not even short. So we'll be all individually poking through these over the next couple of weeks before we get into things like Elden Ring Nightreign, and then of course the big June releases alongside everything coming out with Switch 2. So the Clair Obscur review is up on the site. We have the 100 line kind of like unscored review in progress from Cullen up on the site. Mikhail's got multiple features up on the site for Clair Obscur on Steam Deck, Oblivion on Steam Deck, things like that, as well as, the majority of the news posts are also under under Mikhail's wing. So thank you so much, Mikhail, for covering everything from week to week. Junior's Final Fantasy 11 era server op-ed is also up on the site. So as always, this is the point where we normally look forward to next week. I honestly have no idea for next week. Let me pull up Adam's RPGs of 2025 article to see what are we looking at first week of May, if anything. So Toho Spell Carnival. You guys kind of talked about that last week. If anyone is interested in going into the new Compile Heart game.
Well, and I think it's only a port also.
Yeah, right. It
Yeah.
released in November on consoles. So we'll play it by ear, seeing like what we have. One game that I played through this week was Saga Frontier 2, and I enjoyed it immensely. So I know a lot of us are just getting back to stuff that's released in March and April. So we'll see kind of where we're at next week in terms of people getting through a lot of these titles. But for those that made it to the end of this very long podcast, we appreciate all of you so much for listening. Please give us a follow on any of the social media networks. Just search for RPG Space Site, and you should be able to find us. Whatever you listen to this podcast on, give us a like, give us a rating, give us a comment. We love to see those. Join our Discord, discord.gg/RPG site. Go ahead and join that link. And join us next week for another episode of the Tetracast. Thank you again so much for listening. Until you hear from us next time, stay safe, take care. We'll talk to y'all later.